Chapter 438. 20 days later, Wang Daoyuan arrived at the treasured Cauldron Mountain. He sent a message to Wang Daoyin, who quickly came to welcome him. The two arrived at Daoist Thunderflame's abode, where he was teaching Wang Mingting how to forge tools. Although Wang Mingting was Wang Daoyin's disciple, Daoist Thunderflame treated him as his own grandson. He didn't need Wang Daoyin's guidance in forging tools or cultivation, as he did everything himself. After arriving at Daoist Thunderflame's forging room, Wang Daoyuan bowed and said, "Disciple pays his respects to master." Daoist Thunderflame scanned him with his spiritual sense and said with a smile, "Not bad, you've reached the middle stage of the Zifu realm. With your acquired spiritual body, you won't encounter any bottlenecks until you reach a major realm. In another 60 or 70 years, you should be able to attempt to form your core. Daoyin, take Mingting away first. I have some confidential matters to discuss with Daoyuan." Wang Daoyin took Wang Mingting away, and Daoist Thunderflame said with a smile, "Your fire attribute spiritual energy fluctuation contains traces of pure yang qi. You should have refined the scarlet yang true fire. Good lad, you're quite capable. You managed to deceive the four major powers of Beiyuan Xiaofan, as well as two first-rate countries. Even I was fooled by you. I was worried that you might have been tricked by Tu Yuming, so I sent people to gather information about him. I found that he wasn't much stronger than your second brother, so I knew that you'd be fine. Now that I look at you, it's as I expected. You've come to the southern wasteland to search for the metal attribute spiritual fire and the essence of earth, right?" Wang Daoyuan replied, "I can't hide anything from you, master. I've reached the middle stage of the Zifu realm, and I've even comprehended the White Tiger's charm. I'm not at a disadvantage when fighting against ordinary late-stage Zifu realm cultivators. Therefore, I want to travel to the southern wasteland. I've come to the treasured Cauldron Mountain to see Master, and to ask Master for advice on where to find the metal attribute spiritual fire and the essence of earth. Also, I've obtained the scarlet feather crow's egg in Daoist 100 Spirits abode. Its life force is still very abundant. I've nurtured it with the scarlet yang true fire for more than 10 years, but it still refused to hatch." Adept Lei Yen stroked his beard and pondered for a long time before saying, "I didn't find any records of how Adept Bai Ling obtained the scarlet-feathered crow back then. The scarlet-feathered crow was of the fire attribute, and it also had pure yang qi. It was not a problem to nurture it with the scarlet yang true fire. However, for the past 20,000 years, the scarlet yang primordial fire could only be sustained by earth fire. This scarlet-feathered crow egg did not lack fire attribute spiritual energy, but it might not have enough yang energy. You can use some spiritual items with abundant yang qi to supplement the yang qi of the scarlet-feathered crow egg. The blood fire hibiscus outside is not bad. In a while, you can chop off a few larger branches and extract their essence. Use it to nourish the scarlet-feathered crow eggs. It should be able to speed up the hatching process. As for the metal element spirit flame and the earth element essence, they are extremely rare, and I have no idea where they can be found. There were quite a few level 4 spirit veins in the southern wasteland, and the spirit chi there was much denser than in the territories of other countries. If it weren't for the violent spiritual qi, the southern wasteland would definitely be Beiyuan Xiaoxian's holy land for cultivation. When the time comes, you can just look for those metal and earth attribute level 4 spirit veins." Wang Daoyuan said embarrassedly, "Thank you, master, for clearing my doubts. I don't have any experience in fighting with devil cultivators, so I came here to ask for some methods to deal with devil cultivators." Daoist Lei Yen laughed, "That's right. There's no need to beat around the bush with master. You're not someone who knows your place. I knew that you would enter the southern wasteland sooner or later, so I've already prepared everything for you." After saying that, he took out a purple token, a level 3 upper-grade soft armor, and 2 bottles of elixirs. Wang Daoyuan could not tell what this purple token was. He felt that it was a magic tool, but the engravings on it were not tool patterns, but talisman patterns. Daoist Lei Yen handed the items over to him and said with a smile, "You should be very confused about this purple token, right? This was created by one of our ancestors, and it's called the Purple Lightning Evil Punishing Token. This ancestor was proficient in refining tools and creating talismans. He combined the methods of refining tools and talisman techniques to create this item. This can be considered a special talisman. It's just that the materials used to refine it are rather precious, so it can be used multiple times to replenish spiritual energy. Activating the Purple Lightning Evil Punishing Token can release a purple lightning bolt. Its power is equivalent to an all-out attack from an early Aurus Core Stage cultivator. It can be used to deal with early Aurus Core Stage Devil cultivators and Evil cultivators. Against an early Aurus Core Stage cultivator, it can at most injure him. I don't have high attainments in the Tao of Talismans, so I followed the instructions and created this nondescript item that can only be used 3 times. The difference in strength between Aurus Core Stage cultivators and Zifu Stage cultivators is huge. There are many ways to dodge this purple lightning bolt. Don't rely on the Purple Lightning Evil Punishing Token to provoke early Aurus Core Stage cultivators. This soft armor was called the Blood Fire Purple Gold Armor. It was made from the bark of the Blood Fire hibiscus tree and the silk of the demon-suppressing purple gold. These 2 materials have the ability to restrain devil cultivators and evil cultivators. Devil cultivators and evil cultivators below the Aurus Core Stage can't break this armor in one hit. You have the Black Tortoise Shield, so you're not afraid of facing enemies head-on. However, devil cultivators specialize in sneak attacks, so you still have to be on guard. Of these 2 bottles of pills, one is Sweet Rain Jade Dew Pill, which can quickly heal injuries. The other bottle is Soul Awakening Pill, which can recover spiritual sense in half the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. You have a lot of spiritual wine and a high alcohol tolerance, so I don't need to prepare pills for you to recover spiritual energy. With these things and the Wind Fire Flying Kite. As long as you don't provoke Aurus Core Stage cultivators, you won't be in any danger. Wang Daoyuan took these things and cupped his hands. "Thank you, Master." He kept the other things in his storage bag and took out the Purple Lightning Evil Punishing Token. He observed it carefully, trying to analyze the refining method. Lei Yen smiled, "Don't waste your energy. This thing requires at least a Tier 4 weapon refiner to refine. You're still far from it. When you become a Tier 4 weapon refiner, I'll naturally pass the refining method of the Purple Lightning Evil Punishing Token to you. For now, you should focus on cultivation." Wang Daoyuan stayed at the Treasure Cauldron Mountain for a few days before preparing to leave. Before leaving, he left Wang Daoyin 20 purple rhythm pills and 30 meridian shielding pills. He also left Wang Mingting some yellow bud millet and soul-chasing bee honey. That blood fire hibiscus was also unlucky. Wang Daoyuan chopped off a few old branches that were as thick as an adult's thigh. After that, Wang Daoyuan left the Treasure Cauldron Mountain and headed south. 2,000 miles south of the Treasure Cauldron Mountain was the border of the southern wasteland. Within 1,000 miles south of the border, the spiritual energy wasn't too violent. It was still within the acceptable range for ordinary cultivators. A slightly violent spirit chi was actually very beneficial to body refinement cultivators. Therefore, the border of the southern wasteland had become a gathering place for body refinement cultivators, forming many markets. Spiritual energy was more violent and could easily damage a cultivator's meridians. Therefore, the meridian shielding pill was extremely popular in these markets. Its price was close to the purple rhythm pill. Wang Daoyuan flew 2,000 miles south from the Treasure Cauldron Mountain and arrived at the Singing Sand Market. Further south of the Singing Sand Market was a large area where the Gobi Desert and grassland coexisted. It was called the Singing Sand Plains. Although the southern wasteland had the word wasteland in its name, it wasn't actually considered desolate. Although there were deserts and Gobi Desert, forests and lakes were not rare. Not the entire southern wasteland was like the Singing Sand Plains. Near the Singing Sand Plains, there was a large earth attribute spirit vein of the 4th level. This spirit vein stretched for thousands of miles. It was possible that it could nurture earth essence. Although the southern wasteland might not be as dangerous as the heaven/mountain range, Wang Daoyuan didn't dare to run around casually. He did as he pleased in the heaven/mountain range, which was built on the basis of familiarity. In addition, he had the soul-chasing bees to scout the way. He knew where he could go and where he couldn't. If he dared to continue running around like this in the southern wasteland, he probably wouldn't live for more than a few days. To be safe, he should stay in the Singing Sand Market for a period of time and figure out the situation of the Singing Sand Plains before exploring further. Chapter 439. This Mingsha market was formed spontaneously and wasn't organized, so the shops were very messy. Unlike other markets, only Violet Palace Realm and Foundation Establishment cultivators often walked outside the shops, and the weakest among them were late Foundation Establishment cultivators. The spiritual chi here was somewhat berserk, and those with low cultivation couldn't stay outside for long periods of time. Wang Daoyuan was dressed as a vagrant cultivator, but he didn't wear a veil or bamboo hat. In this sort of unregulated market, there were no rules, and it was very common to use spiritual sense to investigate others, so wearing a veil wasn't very meaningful. He disguised himself as a middle-aged man and swaggered into the market square. There were many late Violet Palace Realm cultivators here, and with his cultivation, he wasn't very conspicuous. As such, he didn't conceal his cultivation and converted all of the spiritual power in his body into metal and fire attributes. There weren't many mid-Violet Palace Realm cultivators with penta-spiritual roots in the entire Beiyuan Xiuxian, and they were too conspicuous. Currently, he mainly used magic techniques of these 2 attributes against his enemies. As long as he exposed his metal and fire attributes, it wouldn't affect his battle prowess. Wang Daoyuan cultivated the penta-spirit immortal transformation art, which had the effect of tempering his body. His body wasn't weak, and the spiritual chi here couldn't cause him any harm. Instead, the greatest restriction he faced was information. After coming to this unfamiliar place, he originally wanted to find a broker to inquire about the situation, but he didn't find one. Those who could walk around outside were at least late Foundation Establishment cultivators. With such a cultivation, they could find a job wherever they went, so there was no need for them to work as a broker. There weren't any street stalls here, and all business was done in the shops. There were also formations in the shops that could warm spiritual power, so cultivators below late Foundation Establishment would find work in these shops. Without brokers and street stalls, the best way to gather information was to go to a tavern. He found a tavern called Clear River Tavern, sat down in a corner, and ordered a few common dishes and 2 jugs of wine. It was very difficult to grow spirit plants in Mingsha Plains, so the dishes he ordered were made from some demon beasts in the desert and a few spirit plants in the sand. The tavern's business was quite good, and there were over 30 tables in the main hall, with over 20 tables occupied. Wang Daoyuan ate and drank while listening to others talk. Not too long after they sat down, an early-stage Zifu disciple walked in. This person was dressed in a black close-fitting robe made of beast skin. His muscles were bulging and his face was covered with a large beard. However, the animal skin robe on his body was torn in many places, and there were several long bloodstains on his exposed skin. Some were claw marks of demonic beasts, while others seemed to have been inflicted by sharp blades. The late-stage chi refinement cultivator serving the restaurant immediately came forward to greet him. "Senior, what would you like to eat?" The bearded cultivator heroically said, "Give me all the good dishes in your restaurant and 2 jars of wine." He had just found a table and sat down when a skinny early-stage Zifu disciple next to him asked, "Dao Yu Xiang, why are you so generous today? Looking at your injuries, you must have gone hunting in the desert again, right?" The cultivator surnamed Xiang slapped the table and let out a long sigh. I've already gotten over it. Making a living here means that there's no tomorrow. What's the point of saving spirit stones? 2 days ago, I went to Bluestone Mountain to hunt with a few old friends. I accidentally bumped into fierce sand wolves hunting and lost 2 brothers. On the way back, they were blocked by the flying sand bandits. After a bloody battle, I was the only one who managed to escape. Sigh, we're all old friends who have gone through fire and water with us for 100 or 200 years, and now they're all gone. Know-it-all, we can be considered old acquaintances. I don't have many friends left, so come and have a drink with me. The skinny cultivator laughed and said, all right, since Dao Yu Xiang wants to have a drink or two, then I'll risk my life to accompany you. It's just that what's Dao Yu going to do next? The cultivator surnamed Xiang waved his hand. Who cares about him? I'll live one day at a time. In the first place, I provoked someone I shouldn't have in the north. Now that I've run over here, I can't go back anymore. When my spirit stones run out, I'll go seek refuge with the wild sand wanderer. He has a grudge with the flying sand bandits, so maybe in the future he'll have a chance to exterminate the flying sand bandits. The 2 people chatted as they ate, and very quickly they were full. The other customers listened to the 2 people's conversation and were also discussing in low voices. Wang Daoyuan listened to the conversation between the 2 people and the other customers. He had a bit of understanding of the situation in Mingsha Plateau. It seems that there are already wild beasts here, and the fierce sand wolf is one of them. These guys live in the violent spiritual energy all year round. Their bodies are extremely tough, and their temperaments are savage. However, their intelligence isn't too high. And this wild sand wanderer isn't a simple character either. To be able to have the title of wanderer, there's no need to talk about his strength. At the very least, his battle prowess is at the peak of the late Zifu stage. The majority of cultivators with the title of wanderer are at the peak of the Zifu stage. Wang Daoyuan is currently able to defeat the majority of late Zifu stage cultivators if he tries his best. But among late Zifu stage cultivators, he can't be considered at the peak, so he can't get the title of wanderer. The flying sand bandits are one of the few groups of bandits that occupy Mingsha Plateau. Their methods are the most vicious. The wild sand wanderer isn't a good person either. He's gathered a group of cultivators under him, and they do business in Mingsha Plateau without any capital. They're called the wild sand bandits. The wild sand wanderer and the leader of the flying sand bandits, the flying sand wanderer, had a grudge when they were young. The 2 groups have always been at loggerheads. Both sides have over 10 Zifu stage cultivators, and over 100 late and peak foundation establishment stage cultivators. With this kind of strength, outside of the southern wasteland, they can be considered a considerable force. However, most of these people have offended people they can't afford to offend in the north, or they're wicked beyond redemption. Many people don't even dare to enter the Mingsha market, let alone go to the north of the southern wasteland. This Mingsha Plateau is really quite dangerous. Ferocious beasts don't matter. After killing so many demonic beasts, they don't care about ferocious beasts with low intelligence. Humans are even more frightening than ferocious beasts. If they're blocked by 2 groups of bandits, the trouble won't be small. The cultivator surnamed Xiang and the know-it-all walked out of the tavern one after the other. Wang Daoyuan also paid the bill and walked out. It's not easy to meet someone who's well informed. How can he let go of such a good opportunity to inquire about information? After following the know-it-all and the cultivator surnamed Xiang, Wang Daoyuan used his divine sense to send a message. Your nickname is the know-it-all. Do you want to sell information? The know-it-all looked around, looking for the person who sent the message. Wang Daoyuan smiled and said, "Don't look, it's me." The know-it-all saw that Daoyu's cultivation was above his, so he quickly cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Daoyu. It's not suitable to talk about business in public. Please come to my store for a chat. Wang Daoyuan nodded. Even if this person doesn't have good intentions, an early-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivator can't do anything to him when he's on high alert. Soon, the two of them arrived in front of an ordinary store. The signboard hanging on the door had the words, "The Know-It-All," written on it. After entering the store, the Know-It-All closed the door and asked Wang Daoyuan to sit down. After the two of them sat down, the Know-It-All smiled and said, "I'm Yuan Chen. Because I'm good at inquiring about information, I got the nickname of the Know-It-All. After establishing the Violet Palace Realm, I opened a store here that specializes in the business of buying and selling information. I wonder what information Dao Yu is looking for. As long as it's related to Mingsha Plains, I know a thing or two." Wang Daoyuan replied, "This is my first time here. What information does Dao Yu think I need?" Yuan Chen had been in the information business for many years, so he naturally knew what information different people were interested in. He immediately took out a beast skin and a few jade slips and handed them to Wang Daoyuan. "Dao Yuzhou, these are the maps of the terrain, ferocious beasts, and spiritual items that have been explored in Mingsha Plains. These jade slips record the areas of influence of the few bandit groups in Mingsha Plains, as well as the distribution of the various forces in Mingsha Market. Dao Yu should be interested in this information, right?" Wang Daoyuan nodded. "This is indeed the information I want to know. Give me a price." Yuan Chen smiled and said, "This information can be obtained by staying in any tavern for 1 or 2 months. 300 spirit stones should be enough. I hope that Dao Yu can visit my store more in the future." Chapter 440. Wang Daoyuan paid the spirit stones and left Yuan Chen's shop. He kept the jade slip and beast skin in the space of the spirit pearl and handed it over to his clone. In this singing sand market, the most reliable inn and restaurant was the Clear River House. The owner of the Clear River Tavern was a late-stage Zifu realm cultivator. There were no rumors of him killing his customers. Wang Daoyuan booked a room in the Clear River Tavern. No matter what, he had to have a place to cultivate. In the space of the Spirit Pearl, Tu Yuming had already finished processing the blood fire hibiscus branch that Wang Daoyuan cut down. The essence was also used to nurture the scarlet-feathered crow egg. Lei Yan's method was indeed effective. The situation of the scarlet-feathered crow egg had indeed changed. Its life force did not increase significantly, but it became more active. Just like before when it was asleep. Although its life force was strong, it was like a pool of stagnant water. Now that the stagnant water had ripples, the entire scarlet-feathered crow egg seemed to have woken up. If he could find more spiritual items that contained pure yang energy, he should be able to hatch the scarlet-feathered crow successfully. Bai Sheng's clone was checking the information he got from Yuan Chen. The cultivators in the market could be divided into 3 types: rogue cultivators who fled here, body refinement cultivators who came to train their bodies, and native cultivators. At the edge of the southern wasteland, ordinary people were extremely rare. South of the treasured Cauldron Mountain, there were not many ordinary people. Although ordinary people did not cultivate, the violent spiritual energy was still unbearable for them. There were very few ordinary people whose parents were rogue cultivators who fled here. They could only live their entire lives in places protected by formations. Most of the natives here were half-demons. Their bodies were stronger than humans, and they could barely adapt to the environment at the edge of the southern wasteland. Ordinary people were extremely rare, and there were very few female rogue cultivators. Most of the cultivators who could not stay in the north and fled to the southern wasteland, and took root here, could only marry half-demons. Therefore, the natives here more or less had some demon bloodline. Half-demons could only live in the border areas and could not go too deep into the southern wasteland. They also had to face the threat of ferocious beasts, and there were not many of them. Therefore, the native forces of the Singing Sand Plains were very weak and were far from being able to dominate the market. In the Singing Sand Market, the wandering body refinement cultivators and the first generation of escapees had a higher status. After hearing this news, Wang Daoyuan was slightly relieved. At least in the Singing Sand Market, he didn't have to worry about offending a force that he couldn't afford to offend and being dealt with. The only ones who posed a threat to him were the bandits in Songsha Plain. When the cultivators in the Singing Sand Market went out to hunt or search for ores, they would always go out in groups. For example, the cultivator surnamed Xiang that they had met before. If they had not encountered the fierce sand wolves, the group of people would not have been injured, and the flying sand bandits would not have attacked them. After all, the flying sand bandits were after wealth and did not like to risk their lives. There was a grade 4 earth elemental energy vein in Mingsha Plain, and there was a possibility of nurturing the earth element essence there. Even if the chances were slim, Wang Daoyuan still wanted to give it a try. Therefore, exploring Mingsha Plain was inevitable. Although he preferred to explore alone, in order to avoid being surrounded by several groups of bandits, it was better to go out in a group. The place where the cultivators gathered was the southernmost part of the Singing Sand Market. Wang Daoyuan was not in a hurry to go out. Instead, he stayed in the Clear River Tavern for the time being to gather information about the bandits. The information that Yuan Chen gave him could not be completely trusted. It was better to verify it here. Half a month later, he left the Clear River Tavern and headed to the southernmost part of the Singing Sand Market to look for cultivators who could go out in groups. The place where the groups were gathered was a large open space, and it was quite lively. The groups that went deep into the Singing Sand Plain were usually Violet Palace Realm cultivators and Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. After all, there were not many Violet Palace Realm cultivators, and it was difficult to find suitable ones. Moreover, there were some simple tasks that did not require Violet Palace Realm cultivators to do, such as activating formations, scouting, and healing Violet Palace Realm cultivators. Late or peak Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators might not necessarily be inferior to early Violet Palace Realm cultivators in these kinds of tasks. When the Spirit Stones were divided, Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators needed much less. Of course, these Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators also needed to have a skill that could play a role outside of battle. In this open space, Violet Palace Realm cultivators sat in groups of 3 to 5. The Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators were yelling about the situation and goals of the groups, looking for suitable cultivators to form a group with. When Wang Daoyuan arrived at the open space, over 10 people came up to him to strike up a conversation. He naturally wouldn't join the groups that had 6 or 7 Violet Palace Realm cultivators and wanted to recruit 1 or 2 Violet Palace Realm cultivators. It was very likely that such a group would kill the newcomers. Even if that wasn't the case, it was very likely that they would use the newcomers as a shield when they encountered danger. Wang Daoyuan took a fancy to a group of 4 Violet Palace Realm cultivators and 6 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. From the shouts of the Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, he learned that their goal was to head to the Yellow Jagged Mountain to kill the mid-grade Grade 3 demonic beast, the Yellow Jagged Python. The Yellow Jagged Mountain was also on a Grade 4 Earth Attribute Spirit Vein, so he could take a look at it. This group only had 4 Violet Palace Realm cultivators, 1 mid-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivator, and 3 early-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivators. With a group like this, even if they attacked him, he was confident that he would be able to escape unscathed. Wang Daoyuan took the initiative to strike up a conversation. He clasped his hands towards the middle-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivator and said, "I am Zhou Ming. I wish to join Daoyu's group. What do you think, Daoyu?" The late-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivator was dressed in a violet robe and had white hair and a beard. He inspected Wang Daoyuan's cultivation level and laughed, "I am Xue Ling. Greetings, Daoyu." Given Daoyu's middle-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivation, it wouldn't be hard for you to join a group of 10 or so Violet Palace Realm cultivators. Why did you choose to join my small group? Wang Daoyuan laughed, I've only just arrived here. If I were to join a group by myself, I'm afraid that they would eat me up until not even my bones would be left. I want to go out and gain experience, not go out and throw my life away. It's better to find a group that doesn't have many Violet Palace Realm cultivators. Xueling nodded. Daoyu's words are reasonable. Then I welcome Daoyu to join. Dare I ask, what techniques does Daoyu have? We can have a rough understanding of them so that when hunting demonic beasts, we can take care of each other. Wang Daoyuan replied, I am a dual-attribute cultivator of metal and fire. My battle prowess is decent, and I am skilled in artifact forging and pill concocting. Both are at the low grade of the 3rd rank. Hearing these words, Xueling's eyes lit up. The reason they went to hunt yellow jagged pythons was to trade for spirit stones. The corpses of yellow jagged pythons were to be used for pill concocting or artifact forging. If he had someone in his group who was skilled in artifact forging and pill concocting, he would be able to deal with the yellow jagged pythons himself and save himself from being exploited. Xueling's face was filled with joy. He pointed at the 3 female cultivators amongst the early-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivators and said, Daoyu, you have great ability. Let me introduce you to Daoyu. This is my daughter, Xuechan. She is skilled in formations. In the past, when we went out to hunt demonic beasts, we relied on her to preside over the formations. Wang Daoyuan greeted Xuechan. Female cultivators were extremely rare amongst wandering cultivators, and those who had cultivated to the Violet Palace realm were even rarer. This Xuechan's appearance was also not bad. Although she couldn't be considered a peerless beauty, she could still be considered to be above average. Xueling then pointed at the other 2 early-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivators and said, These 2 Daoyu are Chu Cheng and Wu Xiao. They are both body refiners who have come here to temper themselves, and their battle prowess is extremely strong. Wang Daoyuan greeted the 2. These 2 were both tall and muscular, and their bodies were covered with knotted muscles. It was obvious at a glance that they weren't to be trifled with. Xueling smiled and said, with Daoyu joining us, 2 mid-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivators and 1 early-stage Violet Palace Realm cultivator will be able to kill yellow jagged pythons as easily as lifting a finger. There is no need to continue recruiting others. Everyone, make your preparations. We will set out as soon as possible. Xuechan and the other Foundation establishment cultivators entered the market to purchase. A quarter of an hour later, they were back. After everyone had arrived, Xueling took out a high-grade 2nd-grade flying boat that was only 3 meters long. Everyone boarded the flying boat and headed towards the southeast. This flying boat's speed wasn't slow. It could travel over 3,000 kilometers in 2 hours. After 4 hours, the yellow jagged mountain appeared in front of them. This yellow jagged mountain wasn't very tall. The highest peak wasn't even 3,000 meters tall, and the mountain range stretched for over 100 kilometers. As far as the eye could see, the entire mountain was covered in an earthy yellow color. There were jagged rocks of grotesque shapes, and not a single blade of grass grew. Chapter 441. Xueling ordered the Foundation establishment cultivators controlling the flying boat to land at the foot of the mountain northwest of Yellow Jagged Mountain. He pointed at Yellow Jagged Mountain and said, There's a small valley in the middle of Yellow Jagged Mountain. There's a rank 3 spirit vein and a spirit spring in the valley. The yellow jagged python we're going to kill is in this valley. The sky above the valley is filled with strange rocks. The flying boat can't enter, so we can only go on foot. The spirit energy here is a bit violent. If you feel uncomfortable, take out your one-time use magic tools to resist the violent spirit energy. They were already several thousand kilometers deep into Mingsha Plain, so the violent spirit energy had increased. Wang Daoyuan only felt his meridians swell a bit after the spirit energy entered his body, but it wasn't a big problem. As for the Foundation establishment cultivators, without the protection of the flying boat's formation, the veins on their foreheads bulged and their faces flushed red. Each of them took out a jade pendant about an inch in diameter. After activating it with spirit energy, it was immediately enveloped by a layer of milky white light. Soon after, their complexions quickly improved. Xueling continued, "Let's end this quickly. These one-time use magic tools can only last for 2 hours. While the Foundation establishment cultivators still have the strength to fight, let's cooperate with the formation and quickly finish off the target. Otherwise, with only us Zifu realm cultivators acting, it'll be troublesome. If we make a big commotion, we'll attract other beasts." Xuechan took out formation plates and distributed them to the Foundation establishment cultivators. After distributing them, Xueling led everyone on foot. After walking for several dozen breaths of time, they found a narrow mountain path. This path was only 2 feet wide. Chu Cheng and Wuxiao both had to walk sideways to pass. After walking for about 3 kilometers along the mountain path, the path ahead suddenly opened up. Although there was still very little light in the sky, the space in front of them had become much larger. Xueling transmitted to everyone, "Yellow jagged pythons are vicious beasts. They have extremely low intelligence and weak spiritual sense, but their bodies are strong and their hearing is extremely sharp. Everyone, try not to make a sound. If there's a problem, use your spiritual sense to communicate." Everyone nodded silently. Soon after, Xuechan began to instruct everyone to set up a formation. Wang Daoyuan scanned the formation plates with his spiritual sense and then looked at where they were placed. He saw that this was a low-grade rank 3 earthen dragon trapping formation. This formation's main function was to trap and suppress. It didn't have any offensive power. After the Foundation establishment cultivator buried the formation, Xueling took out a rank 2 wild boar from the spirit beast pouch. He sent his voice to everyone, "Find a place to hide, conceal your presence and don't reveal yourselves." Everyone found a place to hide. Xueling took out a silver sword and beheaded the wild boar. He abandoned the wild boar and quickly looked for a place to hide. Wang Daoyuan felt that this trap was too childish. However, he didn't expect that after a few breaths, a 3-meter-long python would emerge from the darkness. The python's body was covered in layers of yellow scales, and there was not a single weak point on its body. It was said that if you hit a snake, you should hit its weak spot. However, even if you hit its weak spot, you wouldn't be able to hurt it. The python kept flicking its tongue and smelling the scent of blood. Soon, it entered the range of the earthly dragon trapping formation. Wang Daoyuan couldn't help but sigh. This beast's intelligence was really low. Most rank 1 demonic beasts wouldn't fall for such a simple trap. A class 3 mid-tier dire beast was struck just like that. Xuechan took out a command medallion and injected spiritual power into it. The 10 or so formation discs that had been buried in advance emitted a dazzling yellow light. The light condensed into pillars of light. These pillars of light continued to extend and quickly formed the illusion of a cage. Xuechan waved her hand and smiled confidently. "Foundation establishment cultivators, go guard the 5 formation discs in the inner layer and prevent the yellow jagged python from breaking out." The yellow jagged python fiercely slammed into the cage a few times, causing the illusion to shake. 6 Foundation establishment cultivators quickly ran over and injected spiritual power into the formation discs, increasing the formation's power. Xuechan also ran to the 5 formation discs in the inner layer and controlled an isolated formation disc. This formation disc should be the core of the formation. With a Zifu disciple overseeing it, the yellow jagged python wouldn't be able to break the formation in a short period of time. The yellow jagged python slammed into the cage again, but the illusion remained unmoved. Although it was a dire beast with low intelligence, it still had innate magical arts. It emitted a violent wave of spiritual power, causing the ground to tremble faintly. It wanted to use the ground to execute an earth-type magical art and disperse the formation. However, the earthly dragon trapping formation was specifically used to trap demonic beasts, so how could it not be prepared? This wave of spiritual power was blocked by the formation and the ground didn't move at all. The yellow jagged python used an earth escape technique again, but it still couldn't break out of the formation's confinement. The Shui father and daughter both revealed smiles. This yellow jagged python had already become a turtle in a jar. Shui Ling took out his silver longsword and attacked the yellow jagged python's head. This earthly dragon trapping formation defended against the inside but not the outside. The python inside couldn't escape, but attacks from the outside could easily pass through the formation. However, when Shui Ling's flying sword struck the yellow jagged python's head, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. The yellow jagged python was completely unharmed. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They didn't expect the yellow jagged python's defense to be so strong. Shui Ling was also a metal-type cultivator, but his flying sword couldn't even break through the enemy's defense. Chu Cheng and Wu Zhao's magic tools were also heavy swords. If sharp blades couldn't break through the yellow jagged python's defense, then heavy swords were even more useless. They could only rely on heavy blows to injure the yellow jagged python's internal organs. Shui Ling asked, "Zhou Daoyu is a metal-type and fire-type dual cultivator. Do you have a way to break through the yellow jagged python's defense?" Wang Daoyuan answered, "This yellow jagged python's entire body is covered in scales. Its only weakness is its mouth. If you let it open its mouth, I'll have the confidence to kill it in one strike. If you can't, then you can only use fire-type magic to slowly roast it." Hearing this, Chu Cheng and Wu Xiao each wielded a heavy sword and smashed it towards the yellow jagged python's head. The yellow jagged python was also extremely arrogant. It didn't dodge at all and used its head and tail to meet the heavy swords head-on. The two of them didn't have enough cultivation to pose a threat to the yellow jagged python. The shockwaves from the battle hit the formation, causing the 6 Foundation establishment cultivators to feel a lot of pressure. As for Shui Chan, who was controlling the formation, her forehead was also covered in sweat. If this continued, they wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. At that time, the formation would be broken and all their previous efforts would be wasted. Shui Ling clenched his teeth and took out a 5-inch square silver seal. As he continued to inject spiritual energy into the seal, it quickly grew to a size of 5 feet. At this time, Shui Ling controlled the seal and smashed it towards the yellow jagged python's head. The yellow jagged python wanted to dodge, but it was blocked by Chu Cheng and Wu Xiao. Helpless, it could only circulate its spirit power and take this blow head-on. The seal smashed onto the python's head, but it still couldn't break through its defense. However, the yellow jagged python had suffered a heavy blow and raised its head to roar in pain. Wang Daoyuan instantly took out the baneful life extinction sword. With a wave of his right-hand sword finger, the flying sword flew straight towards the yellow jagged python's mouth. This flying sword had been given to him by Luo Jioyo when he was conferred the title of Elder. At this time, the yellow jagged python's mind was in a daze. Before it could react, the flying sword had already entered its abdomen. Although Wang Daoyuan wasn't using the white tiger blade, he could still use the white tiger sword intent. The baneful life extinction sword carried a large amount of sword chi and fiendish aura as it poured into the yellow jagged python's body. No matter how strong its body was, its internal organs couldn't withstand Wang Daoyuan's full power attack. The yellow jagged python's body writhed violently. After a few breaths, it stopped struggling. The baneful life extinction sword flew out of its mouth. Wang Daoyuan cleaned the sword several times before putting it away. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Xuechan stopped activating the formation and instructed the Foundation establishment cultivators, "Go see if there's anything good in the yellow jagged python's cave residence." Xue Ling put away the seal and the yellow jagged python's corpse. The Foundation establishment cultivators also swept through the cave residence and found several pieces of rank 3 earth attribute materials. Xue Ling took the materials and said, "We can't stay here for long. Let's return to Singing Sand Market first and then divide the spoils." Everyone had no objections and returned along the path they came from. Just as they walked out of the mountain path, a rank 3 lower grade khaki flying sword slashed towards them. Wang Daoyuan waved his hand and the baneful life extinction sword flew over, directly cutting the khaki flying sword into two. An arrogant voice sounded, "I didn't see that there was a sword cultivator in your group. Kid, you have the qualifications to join us flying sand bandits." Chapter 442. Before he finished speaking, 3 flying boats appeared in front of everyone. On each boat, there were 2 Zifu realm cultivators and more than 10 Foundation establishment realm cultivators. In terms of strength, Wang Daoyuan's side really didn't have the advantage. On the first boat stood a tall and sturdy middle-stage Zifu realm man with yellow hair and a yellow beard. He sneered at Wang Daoyuan's group, revealing 2 extremely long canine teeth. This person should be a half-demon, but he didn't have much demon blood. Apart from his hair and canine teeth, he didn't have any other demon characteristics. He looked at Wang Daoyuan and said with a smile, "Kid, not everyone has the qualifications to join Flying Sand Wanderer. Letting you join is giving you face. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Wang Daoyuan said with disdain, "I've always liked to be free. I'm not even willing to become an elder of a big sect, so why would I serve a Zifu realm cultivator? If you have something to say, just say it. After that, we still have to hurry on with our journey." The yellow-haired cultivator sneered, "Interesting. You're even a genius cultivator from outside. I'll first complete the mission given to me by Flying Sand Wanderer, then kill your arrogance." After saying this, he waved his hand, and the 3 flying boats surrounded everyone. He looked at Xuechan and asked Xue Ling, "Old man surnamed Xue, our big boss Flying Sand Wanderer wants to marry a human female cultivator. I think your daughter is pretty good. Miss Xuechan marrying our big boss is a good thing. It's better for her to marry a human. In this Mingsha plain, how many people can compare to our big boss?" Wang Daoyuan felt that it was a bit strange to meet someone who wanted to snatch someone. Previously, he had only dealt with the Red-Beard bandits and had seen them plunder businesses, but he had never seen anyone who wanted to snatch a bride. However, there were very few ordinary human women in Mingsha Plain, and even fewer female cultivators. Flying Sand Wanderer was also a particular person. If he married a half-demon woman, his descendants would be stained with demon blood. Although they would live longer, their cultivation speed would be very slow, and their comprehension wouldn't be that good. In a place like Mingsha Plain, where even living was hard, there wasn't much time to grow. Without strength, even living would be a problem. No matter how long one's lifespan was, it wouldn't have any value. Furthermore, once a descendant had a demonic bloodline, it would be difficult for them to escape the influence for several generations. Unless the demonic beast's bloodline was a high-level demonic beast or even a divine beast, the demonic beast's descendants' cultivation speed would be greatly affected and their lifespan would be greatly extended. But this kind of half-demon woman, even Jindan stage cultivators would be tempted. How could she fall into the hands of the Flying Sand bandits? Xue Ling took out a storage bag and clasped his hands. "Dao Yu, my daughter is still young and has no intention of getting married for the time being. Please be magnanimous, Dao Yu. This is a small token of appreciation from this old man. Please accept it, Dao Yu." The yellow-haired cultivator didn't even look at the storage bag in Xue Ling's hand. "Old man, are you deaf? Who wants your little stuff? What our leader wants is your daughter. Either you marry your daughter obediently, or we can only use force. At that time, apart from your daughter and this sword cultivator, I'm afraid no one here will survive." After speaking, the 6 Zifu disciples all took out their magic artifacts, preparing to attack. Xuechan protected a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator behind her. Her face was bitter, tears welling up in her eyes. This weeping beauty, any man would feel heartache seeing her. Chu Cheng and Wu Xiao were both young, only around 100 years old. Among the Zifu disciples, they were all hot-blooded brats. How could they endure this? Furthermore, looking at the expressions of these two people, they were a bit interested in Xuechan. Hearing the yellow-haired cultivator's words, Chu Cheng immediately shouted angrily. "If you dare touch us, I'm afraid the flying sand bandits won't leave even a chicken or a dog alive." Wu Xiao also said disdainfully. "If you really fight with your lives on the line, the 6 of you really might not be able to leave alive." The spells that the 2 of them used when fighting with the yellow serpent should be the inheritance of the Wu and Chu royal families. But looking at their strength, they shouldn't be direct descendants. But as members of the royal family, they still couldn't avoid their pride. Hearing the tone of their words, these 2 guys still had some status in their respective countries. At the very least, they were the sons of a feudal lord. Furthermore, the meaning of Wu Xiao's words was that they were still hiding some great killing weapon on them. The yellow-haired cultivator's face was also a bit bewildered. In order to snatch a bandit's wife for the leader, it wasn't worth it to put their lives on the line. These 2 guys were clearly body refinement cultivators who came from outside to gain experience. These kind of people mostly had a background and were ruthless characters who had great killing weapons on them. If they were provoked, the flying sand bandits would really be in danger. But if they were scared off by a few words, they wouldn't be able to have a foothold among the flying sand bandits in the future. He pondered for a while and smiled. Looks like these 2 body refinement cultivators still have some background. But, you want to make us retreat with just your mouth? What kind of people do you think we are? Xue Ling was also an old fox who had been in the cultivation world for hundreds of years. Naturally, he could see that the yellow-haired cultivator's attitude had softened. He took out another storage bag and said with a smile, "You are a magnanimous person, don't lower yourself to our level. I still have some savings here, and I'm willing to give them all to you. Please be magnanimous." The yellow-haired cultivator was a bit conflicted in his heart. He could either take the money and leave, but it would be a bit shameful, and his future status would also be affected. Or he could risk his life to take down the other party, and his subordinates would suffer heavy casualties. If he succeeded, naturally everyone would be happy. If he couldn't win against the other party, he would lose everything. When he returned, the leader wouldn't forgive him. He repeatedly swayed between the 2 choices. Glancing at Wang Daoyuan, he had a plan in his heart. He smiled and said, "Old man Xue, your daughter's matter can be put aside for today. We'll prepare a generous gift for her another day, but I want to take this sword cultivator with me." This plan was indeed not bad. If he could recruit a sword cultivator for the flying sand bandits, not only would his status not fall, it would instead be more stable. The expressions on the 4 people's faces changed. Wang Daoyuan had just joined the team, and didn't have any feelings for them. To be able to escape unscathed, abandoning a teammate wasn't impossible. Moreover, Wang Daoyuan wasn't going to die, but to become a member of the flying sand bandits. Seeing the change in the 4 people's attitude, the yellow-haired cultivator revealed a happy expression. He smiled and said, "That sword cultivator boy, they aren't willing to risk their lives for you. You won't lose out if you join us. Our leader also married a few half-demon women and gave birth to a few daughters. As long as you join, becoming the leader's son-in-law isn't a problem. At that time, you'll be second only to one person in the flying sand bandits. A son-in-law and half a son. After the leader's 100 years, it's not impossible for you to become the leader." Wang Daoyuan looked at the four people's changes, and sneered, if I'm willing to marry a wife, a Jin Dan direct disciple wouldn't be a problem. A mere bandit's nest wants to keep me? When the yellow-haired cultivator heard this, he said angrily, Dao Yu sure talks big, looking down on us flying sand bandits. I'd like to see what ability you have to be so arrogant. Wang Daoyuan smiled contemptuously. Holding the Heaven Fiend Life Extinction Sword with both hands, he released the White Tiger Sword Intent and the White Tiger's Charm. It was as if a White Tiger Divine Beast had descended. Everyone was frightened by the might of the White Tiger. Wang Daoyuan said disdainfully, with your little strength, if I want to kill you within 10 miles, you won't be able to live for more than 2 breaths of time. Even if the flying sand cultivator comes, I can still escape unscathed. Yellow-haired, do you dare to gamble? When the yellow-haired cultivator heard Wang Daoyuan call him yellow-haired, he was furious. The veins on his forehead bulged. Both of his hands clenched into fists, making cracking sounds. He raised his right hand. Everyone took out their magic tools. As soon as he gave the order, they would immediately attack and besiege Wang Daoyuan. Who knew that he waved his hand behind him and shouted, retreat. The flying sand bandits were all stunned. If you want to retreat, just say so. Why are you putting on a posture of wanting to attack? Especially the few Zifu cultivators. They looked at the yellow-haired cultivator with unfriendly expressions. I've already taken out my life artifact, and you're telling me to retreat? It was like hitting cotton with all his strength, and even spraining his waist. Chapter 443. Although they looked down on the yellow-haired cultivator, the 5 Zifu stage flying sand bandits didn't say anything. If they really fought with this sword cultivator, they were also afraid. Although they felt that it was impossible for Wang Daoyuan to kill all 6 of their Zifu stage cultivators by himself, his aura was so frightening. However, his frightening aura made people tremble in fear, and they believed that he could instantly kill someone. No one wanted to be the one to be killed. Everyone became flying sand bandits in order to live a good life without any effort, not to court death. In a situation where victory was certain, everyone wanted to make a move. But now that they had met a tough opponent, they still wanted to hide. Anyway, the leader was yellow-haired cultivator, so if the leader blames them, yellow-haired cultivator would take the blame. The 3 flying ships retreated towards the east, and the cultivators on both sides let out a sigh of relief. The yellow-haired cultivator wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, panting heavily. But looking at that kid's aura, once he made a move, he might not be able to keep his life. Against such an expert, he had to preserve his strength and bring his brothers back unharmed. If he said that the kid was even stronger, not only would the leader not blame him, he would even reward him. Maybe the leader would even personally make a move in anger and capture the kid. At that time, he would have a chance to take revenge. After the flying sand bandits left, Wang Daoyuan withdrew his aura and looked at Xueling and the other 3 Zifu stage cultivators. Previously, when the flying sand bandits wanted to let Xueling and the other 3 go, they only wanted to capture him. The 4 of them had the thought of abandoning Wang Daoyuan and escaping from this place. Wang Daoyuan found a team to prevent these bandits from having any ideas about him and avoid some trouble. These people were not reliable, and if he continued to follow them, he might be betrayed again. He looked at the 4 and sneered, since things have come to this, there is no point in continuing to follow Dao Yu. Although I was the one who killed the yellow python, I don't care about a class 3 dire beast. I like to collect rare materials, give me the things you get from the yellow python's cave, I don't want the yellow python's corpse at all. Wang Daoyuan's request wasn't too much. He put in the most effort, but he only wanted some scraps. In addition, he was very powerful. No matter what request he made, they would not dare to refuse. Xueling cupped his hands and said, Dao Yu's request is very reasonable, I have no objections. It's just that this old man had eyes but failed to see through Dao Yu's strength. I hope that Dao Yu can give this old man another chance. After saying that, he pulled over the Peak Foundation establishment cultivator that Xuechan was protecting earlier and said with a smile, "Ever since I stepped on the path of cultivation, I've been an itinerant cultivator and have never joined any forces." In the blink of an eye, more than 400 years had passed, leaving behind only 2 descendants. This is my son, Xuelin. He has an 8.5-inch metal spirit root. He had also cultivated some sword cultivation spells and was a good seedling for sword cultivation. He was not even 100 years old yet. There was also his daughter, Xuechan. She was only 120 years old. However, she was only a Violet Palace realm female cultivator and didn't possess sufficient strength to protect herself, so it was very easy for her to be reduced to being a dual cultivation vessel for a golden core cultivator of a great power. This old man doesn't have much time left. Once I pass away, it would be difficult for this pair of children to survive. This old man is willing to give his life savings to Dao Yu. I only hope that Dao Yu can take care of them after this old man dies. This old man was quite scheming. He gave all his savings to Wang Daoyuan, then asked him to marry Xuechan and pass on his skills to Xuelin. Unfortunately, Wang Daoyuan did not care about his savings or Xuechan's looks. He liked to travel and rarely gave pointers to his own juniors, let alone an outsider. Clan cultivators were rarely willing to accept outsiders as disciples. After all, the clan was maintained by bloodline. Without the bloodline of the clan, no matter how close one was, they would still be an outsider. Even if they wanted to marry in, no clan would be willing to take in an especially strong person. The status of a true disciple was equivalent to a son and had the right to inherit the master's inheritance. If the disciple's character was not good, it was not uncommon for the disciple to compete with the master's son for the inheritance after the master passed away. There were even cases where the disciple took over the master's clan. Only in sects, which were maintained by master and disciple relationships, would cultivators be willing to accept disciples. Wang Daoyuan was a clan cultivator, so how could he accept outsiders as his disciples so easily? Moreover, Xueling and the others had just wanted to sell him out. He shook his head and smiled. If I wanted spirit stones, it wouldn't take me much effort to earn 1,000,000 or 100,000. I'm not interested in your savings. As for Dao Yu, Xuechan is indeed a rare beauty. But I've seen many beauties, and she's not one of them. I also have no intention of accepting disciples. Even if Xuelin has heavenly spirit roots, I won't accept him. Dao Yu, instead of begging me, you might as well beg Dao Yu Chu Cheng and Wu Xiao. These 2 Dao Yu Chu Cheng and Wu Xiao also have extraordinary family backgrounds. Relying on either of them is much better than relying on a wild crane like me. Female Zifu realm cultivators are rare. It's not impossible for them to marry a member of a royal family. In any case, you've been through fire and water once. I advise Dao Yu to take advantage of the fact that the flying sand bandits have just left and leave Mingsha Plain as soon as possible. It's good to go to Chu or Wu, or to other markets at the edge of the southern wasteland. If you're late, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave. Xueling sighed and took out a storage pouch, handing it to Wang Daoyuan. Since it's like this, I won't say anything more. The flying sand bandits are savage, and the flying sand wanderer is powerful. Please take care of yourself, Dao Yu. Wang Daoyuan took the storage pouch and put it into the space of the spiritual pearl. Just now, he scared away the flying sand bandits. That yellow-haired guy is not someone who can suffer losses. He'll definitely bring more people here to take revenge. Although he's confident that he can escape unscathed from the flying sand wanderer, he'll inevitably have to pay a price. It's better to go to another place and temporarily avoid the danger. He rode his sword towards the northwest, planning to go along the edge of the Wild Sand Bandits area of activity and circle back to the Singing Sand Market. In the space of the spiritual pearl, Doppelganger Tu Yuming opened the storage pouch and checked it. He really did find something useful. There's an earthy yellow feather inside, emitting earth attribute spiritual power. Although it's not a life feather, it's still the feather of an earth attribute demon bird. Moreover, it's still quite fresh. It's probably something left over from the yellow spike python's hunt of an earth attribute demon bird. An earth attribute demon bird is the rarest type of demon bird among the 5 elements. After all, the earth attribute specialty is its thickness, while the bird's specialty is its agility. The two contradict each other. To be able to find traces of an earth attribute demon bird is really not easy. Wang Daoyuan naturally doesn't want to let go of this good opportunity. The yellow spike python's agility isn't strong, and it doesn't like to run around. When it hunts, it mostly relies on waiting for prey. To be able to catch a demon bird, it means that there should be earth attribute demon birds roaming around here. Doppelganger Tu Yuming also found a few fiery red stones in the storage pouch. Other than dense fire attribute spiritual power, there's also dense yang qi. This yang qi is rather heterogeneous and can't be considered pure yang qi. However, it's superior in quantity. If Tu Yuming refines it, it can also be used to nurture the scarlet-feathered crow's eggs. This thing is a bit similar to the fiery sun stone. In the treasure forging inheritance that he copied in Lei Yen Jinren's cave, it's mentioned before. The fiery sun stone is a 3rd-level lower-grade fire attribute spiritual material. It's often used as a supplementary material when forging fire attribute magic weapons. It's not an irreplaceable material, and its value isn't too high. It's just that it's not very common. This thing only exists near lava and absorbs large amounts of fire attribute spiritual power. Fire attribute spiritual power gathers within it. By chance, a portion of the fire attribute spiritual power is converted into yang qi. Just like the crimson sun primordial fire, it can consume fire attribute spiritual power and produce pure yang qi. However, the yang qi produced by the crimson sun primordial fire is too weak. It's not even enough to incubate the scarlet-feathered crow's eggs. The yellow spike python doesn't like to run around. If the fiery sunstone is found in its cave, then it's very likely that there are more fiery sunstones in the depths of the yellow spike mountain. If he can find more fiery sunstones, he won't have to worry about incubating the scarlet-feathered crow's eggs. At this moment, Wang Daoyuan's sword kinesis flight speed has already exceeded 4,000 miles in 2 hours. Even though he took a detour, he still returned to Singing Sand Market after 6 hours. Chapter 444. After Wang Daoyuan returned to the Singing Sand Market, he did not immediately return to the room he rented at the Clear River Tower. Instead, he went to a shop that sold magic tools. This shop was opened by the Divine Weapon Pavilion. It was much larger than the shop in the Clear Glass Market. Some of the markets at the edge of the southern wasteland were the source of the Divine Weapon Pavilion's raw materials. The Divine Weapon Pavilion naturally placed great importance on the shops here. When he was at the Huang Jagged Mountain, the one-time magic tools that the Foundation establishment cultivators used to resist the violent spiritual energy were sold by the Divine Weapon Pavilion. He wanted to find the metal attribute spiritual fire, so he did not know how far he would have to go into the southern wasteland. He still had to prepare a magic tool that could resist the violent spiritual energy. His master, Lei Yen Jinren, did not prepare such a magic tool for him, probably because he was afraid that he would go too deep and encounter danger. In the legacy of refining left behind by the ancestors, there was no such crude magic tool refining method. He could only come to the Divine Weapon Pavilion's shop to see if there were any similar magic tools that were more reliable. After entering the Divine Weapon Pavilion's shop, a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator immediately came up to him. may I ask what magic tool Senior wants? Our shop has all kinds of third-level magic tools. You can even buy a large Dharma artifact like a flying boat here. Wang Daoyuan replied, you should have a magic tool that can resist the violent spiritual energy, right? Give me one of a higher grade. It's best if it's not those cheap one-time magic tools. The Peak Foundation Establishment Cultivator replied, Senior, are you talking about the jade pendant? We do have a high-grade one here. After activating it, it can be used for 12 hours. But we really don't have a one-time magic tool here. Wang Daoyuan naturally did not believe him. He was a refiner, so these things could not be hidden from him. As long as there was a pattern with this function, it would not be strange to refine any kind of magic tool. At most, it would be more difficult to refine, and the materials used would be more precious. However, if they only sold one-time magic tools, this business could be done for a long time. If they sold magic tools that could be used for a long time, this business would become a one-time deal. The Divine Weapon Pavilion naturally hoped to sell one-time magic tools. Wang Daoyuan looked at him in disbelief, and said, you can't hide this from me. Just tell me the price. At this moment, a voice came from upstairs. Daoyu, don't make things difficult for a junior like him. Please come upstairs to talk. Wang Daoyuan felt that this voice was somewhat familiar. It should be a disciple of the Divine Weapon Pavilion that he had met before. Upon reaching the second floor, he saw a middle-stage Zifu disciple seated on a chair. When he saw Wang Daoyuan enter, he gestured for him to take a seat. Wang Daoyuan reverted his face back to normal and smiled. We meet everywhere in life. I didn't expect to see Senior Martial Brother He here. This person was none other than Lei Yen Dao Master's in-name disciple, He Yuanqing. During Wang Daoyuan's Purple Palace Grand Ceremony, he was the one who came to congratulate him. Recognizing that it was Wang Daoyuan, He Yuanqing replied, I was wondering who it was. So it's junior brother Dao Yuan. The market square at the edge of the southern wasteland was an important source of spiritual items for the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Every single city has Zifu disciples who take turns to guard it. I just arrived here not too long ago. Do you want to enter the southern wasteland with the spirit-blocking jade pendant? Wang Daoyuan smiled. Of course. My natal magic artifact is the 5 elements devil subduing seal. Refining the Kirin seal requires the essence of earth, and I can't find it anywhere else. Thus, I can only come to the southern wasteland to try my luck. I wonder if Senior Martial Brother has the spirit-blocking jade pendant? He Yuanqing smiled. The spirit-blocking jade pendant is just a small trick. It's not difficult to refine a normal magic artifact, but it won't be easy to earn spiritual stones. The shop doesn't have it, but I still have a third-grade mid-grade one with me. I'll give it to you. This isn't a magic artifact created by our sect, so I can't give you the refining method. If you don't want to use this jade pendant, you can destroy it, but don't spread it around. Otherwise, the Divine Weapon Pavilion will lose a business. After he finished speaking, he took out a jade pendant and handed it to Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan took the jade pendant and smiled. Don't worry, I know the rules. After exchanging a few words with He Yuanqing, Wang Daoyuan left the shop and returned to the Clear River Inn. In the following days, he didn't rush to go out, but stayed in the side room of the Clear River Inn. Every day, he would order a few dishes and 2 jars of wine in the hall on the first floor. He would eat and drink while asking for information. Just like that, 3 months passed. During this time, the Flying Sand Gang was still very active. However, they were active in the Green Rock Mountain area. The Green Rock Mountain was 10,000 miles east of the Yellow Jagged Mountain. It was the area where the Flying Sand Bandits were active. However, the bandits in the Singing Sand Plain also knew how to operate. They didn't attack the cultivators they saw. When the cultivators who went out to hunt encountered the bandits, as long as they gave them some spiritual stones or resources, the bandits wouldn't attack them. Therefore, the areas where the bandits were active were often visited by cultivators to hunt. The yellow jagged mountain was in the middle of the area where the flying sand bandits and the wild sand bandits were active. It was a buffer zone between the two. Wang Daoyuan also heard news about the earth attribute demonic bird. This earth attribute demonic bird was called the sand-chasing hawk. The sand-chasing hawk's wingspan was about 10 feet. It was covered in earthy yellow feathers and was proficient in many earth attribute spells. Whenever there was a sandstorm in the singing sand plain, they would always follow behind the sandstorm and constantly cast earth attribute spells to increase the power of the sandstorm. Borrowing the power of the sandstorm, heavily injuring the prey, and then hunting the prey. This was also where the name came from. The sand-chasing hawk didn't have a fixed residence. Wherever there was sandstorm, there would definitely be traces of the sand-chasing hawk. This was easy to handle. It was a bit difficult to find a bird in the desert, but it was still very easy to find sandstorm. After 3 months, the cultivators who went to the yellow jagged mountain area didn't find any traces of the flying sand bandits. Wang Daoyuan decided to go to the yellow jagged mountain to look for the fiery sun stone. The various bandits also had spies in the singing sand market. Wang Daoyuan still had to be careful to avoid the flying sand bandits' spies. He didn't want to be found out by the flying sand bandits as soon as he left the singing sand market. He didn't directly go towards the southeast, but first flew towards the west. He passed through the wild sand bandits' area of activity, took a big detour, and came to the yellow jagged mountain. There really wasn't any trace of the flying sand bandits here. He walked into the small valley where he hunted the yellow jagged python. Using his divine sense, he didn't find any threats. He went straight to the yellow jagged python's cave. Last time when he ambushed the yellow jagged python, he didn't carefully investigate this cave. After walking a few hundred feet, he saw a spring with a diameter of about 3 feet. The water in this spring wasn't small, but the surrounding was a desert. This bit of spring water wasn't enough. The spring water flowed out of the spring, but before it flowed out of the valley, it was sucked dry by the sand and rocks. Wang Daoyuan used his divine sense to scan the yellow jagged python's cave, but didn't find a passage leading to the underground. This was very strange. Without a passage leading to the underground, how did the fiery sunstone run from the vicinity of the earth fire to the yellow jagged python's cave? He took out the spirit-seeking compass and probed the underground situation. The result was that within 500 feet of the cave, there was no space that could accommodate the yellow jagged python. This was a place where there was a lack of water, and there were no caves underground. There were only some cracks in the rock, but they couldn't accommodate such a large python. Even though the yellow jagged python was a rank 3 dire beast, it knew the earth escape technique. But no matter how strong its body was, it couldn't escape to the underground lava. Even Yuanian cultivators couldn't escape to 70 to 80,000 feet underground. In the entire valley, this spring water was a bit out of the ordinary. Because it was a hot spring. Wang Daoyuan naturally knew what a hot spring meant. The underground water vein of this spring water was definitely not far from the lava. He used the spirit-seeking compass to probe the bottom of the spring. Below the spring was a slightly wider crack in the rock. However, this crack couldn't accommodate the yellow jagged python. The spirit-seeking compass's probing range could only reach 500 feet underground. It couldn't reach nearly 10,000 feet underground. Since he couldn't find the passage through which the yellow jagged python obtained the fiery sunstone, he gave up. At worst, he could just go back to his old profession and dig directly from the surface to the underground lava. Back then, for the Gui water death flame, he dug for 10 years. Now that his cultivation was high and he had the dust returning flame, it wouldn't take long to dig to the lava. Chapter 445. Wang Daoyuan dug a hole with a diameter of 1 zhang in the ground of the yellow nightmare python's abode. He took out a wisp of returning dust flame and guided it into the hole. The moment the yellow flame came into contact with the rock, it instantly burned fiercely. The concentration of spirit qi in the space of the spirit pearl was much higher than when he was searching for the Gui water nether spring. Naturally, the returning dust flame was also much stronger than before. In addition, there was a rank 4 earth spirit vein nearby, so the earth spirit qi was extremely dense. Originally, the wisp of flame was only as thick as a finger, but after coming into contact with the rock at the bottom of the hole, it instantly covered the entire bottom of the hole. Not only did he not need to use spirit qi to support the burning of the flame, he also needed to continuously extract spirit qi from the flame to prevent it from burning too fiercely. In Mingsha Plain, the earth spirit qi was the most abundant. Once the returning dust flame went out of control, it was hard to say what kind of damage it would cause. The spirit qi extracted from the returning dust flame was not violent at all. It was very similar to his earth spirit qi and could be used by him with a little refinement. Ordinary cultivators could withstand the damage of violent spirit qi even with the spirit isolating jade pendant. However, the spirit isolating jade pendant blocked the spirit qi around their bodies. They could not meditate to recover spirit qi, let alone cultivate. After a long time, the spirit items they carried would be exhausted. Without spirit qi to replenish, no matter how strong they were, they could not avoid death. With the returning dust flame, if one did not have enough spirit qi, they could release the spirit fire and burn some rocks to obtain pure earth spirit qi. It could be used to quickly recover one's spirit qi. Although the recovery speed was slower than drinking spirit wine, it was much better than eating spirit recovery pills. Most importantly, this thing did not cost anything. No wonder Master said that with the spirit fire, there was no need to fear violent spirit qi. Moreover, the spirit qi extracted from the returning dust flame was extremely pure. If it was used to condense true essence, regardless of the speed or the quality of the true essence, it would not be too far off from the heavenly spirit root. This was under the condition that the returning dust flame's fire seed had not been refined. After the 5 elements Taoist refined the spirit fire, his cultivation speed was extremely fast. However, if he kept absorbing spirit qi and did not have the time to circulate his cultivation method to condense true essence, the spirit qi in his body would soon become excessive. He directly sent the spiritual power in his dantian into his sea of consciousness and zifu through his meridians, and then stored them in his spiritual pearl. Using the heaven-burning divine flame technique consumed too much of his divine sense. Back then, in order to test whether the vermilion bird fan modified by his master could be used, he refined a 3rd-rank low-grade vermilion bird fan. Although it was an ordinary magic artifact, it could still increase the power of the flames. After taking out the vermilion bird fan, he used the vermilion bird fire manipulation technique, and the power of his flames doubled. The speed of its descent was also extremely fast. Even if it could burn a hole with a diameter of 10 feet, it could still burn a hole of 400 to 500 feet deep within 2 hours. In the area of Mingsha Plain, the flat terrain was also higher, so the distance between the ground and the underground lava was larger. It was estimated to be more than 90,000 feet. If they didn't need to take a detour, they would be able to see lava within 20 days. 4 hours later, Wang Daoyuan controlled the vermilion bird fan while using the earth mountain technique to block the entrance of the cave. Although there weren't many demonic beasts in the Huang Jagged Mountains, and there weren't many cultivators who came here to hunt, they still had to be cautious. After sealing the entrance of the cave that was more than 100 feet deep, he took out the formation plate and set up an array formation below to block the detection of divine sense. With these preparations, cultivators below the Golden Core realm wouldn't be able to see any clues at all if they didn't observe carefully. After pushing down for more than 1,000 feet, he used the spirit-seeking compass to detect the existence of fiery sunstone at the hot spring vein. Now, Wang Daoyuan understood that this thing was brought up by the spring water. Since it was so coincidental that it was brought up by the spring water, and more than one piece at that, it meant that there was definitely a lot of fiery sunstone below. After pushing down for more than 10 days and digging more than 90,000 feet deep, the rock under his feet became scorching hot. Wang Daoyuan used his water attribute and metal attribute spiritual power, and used the ice armor technique to wrap himself in a layer of ice armor, so he could ignore this little bit of heat. Using the spirit-seeking compass to detect, he found that the underground lava was more than 1,000 feet down. Moreover, the spirit-seeking compass had also found the fiery sunstone vein. The hot spring vein was more than 20 feet above the underground lava, entangled with the fiery sunstone vein. The lower end of the fiery sunstone vein was even closer to the lava. In terms of the quality of the fiery sunstone, the closer it was to the lava, the better. The fiery sunstone above could only absorb a portion of the fire spiritual power that passed through the rock layer, so the quality was naturally not good. The fiery sunstones that were brought up by the hot spring were all of the lower quality. After confirming that there was a fiery sunstone vein, Wang Daoyuan was even more motivated. It only took more than 2 hours to reach the side of the fiery sunstone vein. He deliberately avoided the underground water vein and dug the fiery sunstone from the side of the vein. At this moment, he and the underground lava were only separated by a layer of rock that was more than 100 feet thick. The bottom of the rock layer was directly in contact with the lava. This situation was like cooking a pot. The rock layer was the pot, and he was the ingredient in the pot. He needed to constantly consume water spiritual power to prevent himself from being cooked. At this depth, he couldn't let the dust-returning flame burn anymore. If it burned through the rock and the lava surged up, it would definitely burn him into charcoal. He couldn't persist at this depth for a long time. He had to hurry up and dig the fiery sunstone. The earth-yellow flames that were still burning fiercely were directly stored into the space of the spirit pearl. At the same time, he also stored the vermilion bird fan into the space of the spirit pearl and handed it to his clone, Beiyuan, so that he could control the vermilion bird fan and control the flames to prevent them from burning the spiritual plants. In these few days, Wang Daoyuan had channeled a large amount of earth spiritual power into the space of the spirit pearl. Now, the entire space of the spirit pearl was extremely rich and had already reached the level of a mid-grade rank for spirit vein. However, this spiritual power was like water without a source and would be quickly absorbed and consumed by spiritual plants. The spiritual power in the space would still return to the normal level of an upper-grade rank 3 spirit vein. Wang Daoyuan's understanding of the spirit pearl was still too little. He only knew that the source of the spiritual power in the space should be the void between the space and the outer shell of the spirit pearl. It was just that there was nothing in the void, and there was no spiritual power. He still had no idea how the spiritual power in the space was produced. In any case, it couldn't be produced by the 5 small rank 1 spirit veins. His clone, Beiyuan, was also a cultivator with 5 spirit veins. With Wang Daoyuan's divided soul, he could directly control the vermilion bird fan. With the suppression of the vermilion bird fan, the spiritual fire that surged into the space did not cause much damage. After dealing with the spiritual fire, Wang Daoyuan took out the prairie fire sword and began to dig for the fiery sunstone. The heat here was too strong. Every 15 minutes he dug, he had to run to the surface to rest for a while. However, the strength of the fiery sunstone was not high. He could use the prairie fire sword to pry it open, so the digging speed was not slow. After digging here for 3 days, the fiery sunstone that was dug out filled 5 ordinary storage bags. Adding one piece, it was more than 2,000 kilograms. According to the effect of using the fiery sunstone to nurture the red-feathered black eggs, with so many fiery sunstones, it was enough for the eggs to hatch 8 to 10 times. Wang Daoyuan was also worried that the eggs would cause trouble again, so he dug out more. After digging out enough fiery sunstone, this spirit vein could not be wasted. Who knew when it would be useful? After spending a lot of time, he used the Earth Mountain technique to seal the 500 feet tunnel. After recovering his spiritual power and divine sense, he flew straight up on his sword. When he reached the top of the tunnel, he used his divine sense to investigate. When he found that there was no one outside, he put away the formation plate with ease. The entrance to the cave above was sealed by him with the Earth Mountain technique for more than 10 feet. The newly sealed rock was not very strong. He took out the baneful life extinction sword and pierced through it. He quickly left the cave and came to the surface. A voice came from above the valley. Dao, you are indeed capable. You hid underground for so long and I actually did not discover you. No wonder you dared to say that you could instantly kill cultivators of the same level. I just don't know how strong you are. Is it really as you said? Can you escape unscathed from this old man's hands? Chapter 446. Hearing these words, this person should be the Flying Sand Wanderer. Wang Daoyuan's divine sense went through the narrow gap above the valley and looked towards the sky. He saw a white-haired old man hovering above the valley on his sword. Wang Daoyuan wasn't sure that he could defeat a peak Zifu disciple, but he wouldn't be unable to resist. If he couldn't win, he could just ride the wind-fire flying kite and escape. How could the Flying Sand Wanderer catch up to him? If he really had the ability to catch up to the wind-fire flying kite, then he could only use the purple thunder evil punishing token given by his master to send him away. Using this thing to deal with a golden core cultivator might not be able to take him down, but dealing with a peak Zifu disciple was definitely not a problem. The difference between a golden core and a Zifu disciple was like a moat. Although it was rare for a peak foundation establishment cultivator to exchange 2 moves with a Zifu disciple, it was still possible to find a few. Many of the direct disciples of the major powers could do this. A peak Zifu disciple who could exchange 2 moves with a golden core cultivator was hard to come by in hundreds of years. Although Wang Daoyuan didn't want trouble, he wasn't afraid of the Flying Sand Wanderer. He laughed, "Daoyu, do you want to come down and fight, or should I go up and fight?" The Flying Sand Wanderer replied, "It's better to come up and fight. The valley below is really too narrow, I'm afraid it'll be hard for you and me to use our skills." Wang Daoyuan followed the small path and walked out of the valley. Riding the terminating heaven sword, he flew into the air and faced the Flying Sand Wanderer. Soon after, he took out the white tiger blade and laughed, "I didn't want to be a busybody, but things always come to me. I have no enmity with the Flying Sand Wanderers, why does Daoyu have to force me?" The Flying Sand Wanderer stroked his beard and laughed, as expected of a sword cultivator, this natal artifact is quite extraordinary. Daoyu also has good skills. If I didn't send people to keep an eye on the Huang Jagged Mountain area, I really wouldn't have been able to find you. I see that you're not very old, but to have such strength, your talent is also out of the ordinary. I'm already old, I just want to try again and see if I can form a golden core. I have a few daughters, not to say they're national beauties, but they're all 1 in a million. My daughters can all be married to you, and the Flying Sand Bandits' family business can all be handed over to you. If I can form my golden core, you will be the son-in-law of a golden core cultivator. Even if he was a live-in son-in-law, it wouldn't be embarrassing if word got out. What does Daoyu think? Wang Daoyuan smiled contemptuously. To me, forming the Aurus core is just a matter of time. Even if he's a half-step Yuanying's live-in son-in-law, I don't like him. Daoyu, make your move. I still have a lot of things to do. I don't have time to chat with you. Flying Sand Loose Cultivator coldly snorted, such big words. After saying that, he waved his right hand, and 3 large stones flew over. The white tiger blade in Wang Daoyuan's hand flickered with a silver light, and instantly condensed into 3 sword beams. The sword light flew out and sliced the 3 boulders in half. The 2 halves of the boulder were exhausted and fell down, but the sword radiance still had some energy left. Flying Sand Loose Cultivator frowned. Wang Daoyuan's casual sword radiance had such power. If he used a sword cultivation spell, how strong would it be? Ordinary spells wouldn't be of much use, and would waste his spiritual power in vain. It would be better to directly use a killing move. He dodged the 3 sword beams, and took out a foot-tall earthy yellow gourd. Under the urging of his spiritual power, the gourd quickly grew, and finally grew to more than 10 meters tall. He opened the gourd's lid, and a river of yellow sand gushed out. After a few breaths, the yellow sand that gushed out filled the entire sky. Like a sandstorm, it pressed down on Wang Daoyuan. The sandstorm pressed down on Wang Daoyuan. He probed into the sandstorm, and was shocked. This sandstorm wasn't made of ordinary yellow sand, and it seemed to have an extremely strong suppressive force. Once he got close, he would be suppressed, and even flying on his sword would be difficult. This kind of spell actually restrained the white tiger blade. Even if he used sky-chopping sword, it wouldn't have any effect on this sandstorm. Flying Sand Loose Cultivator hid behind the sandstorm, and it would be hard for him to hurt him. This sand didn't consume Flying Sand Loose Cultivator's spiritual power, but the spiritual power accumulated in the earthy yellow gourd. Moreover, while the gourd was releasing yellow sand, it was also constantly absorbing the surrounding spiritual power. At this rate, there would be more and more yellow sand. Of course, Wang Daoyuan wasn't without a way. Drawing out a wisp of returning dust flame, no matter how much sand there was, it wouldn't be enough. However, once the returning dust flame was exposed, he would probably be besieged by all the Zifu cultivators of Mingsha Plain. Earth attribute spiritual fire was extremely rare, and the returning dust flame was so powerful. If the news spread, there would probably be Jindan cultivators coming to kill him. For a battle that didn't matter whether it was winning or losing, it wasn't worth paying such a big price. If there was a high-level wind attribute spell, it could also completely suppress this sandstorm. Unfortunately, Wang Daoyuan didn't. He didn't intend to take this attack head-on, and turned around on his sword to pull away. This sandstorm didn't have much effect on spiritual sense. Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense was always paying attention to Flying Sand Loose Cultivator's every move. At this time, Flying Sand Loose Cultivator revealed a strange smile. Wang Daoyuan thought to himself that this wasn't good, this was a trick. Without waiting for him to react, the speed of the sandstorm suddenly increased, already surpassing the speed of his flying sword. He immediately called out the flaming wind kite. Under full control, it speed soared, surpassing Flying Sand. Flying Sand Loose Cultivator followed behind the sandstorm, and poured spiritual power and spiritual sense into the gourd. The gourd spat out yellow sand several times faster. The speed of the entire sandstorm was also constantly increasing. At this rate, its speed would soon catch up to Wang Daoyuan. Right now, the scale of the sandstorm was already very large. Even if he used evasion techniques, he wouldn't be able to go around it before being caught up. If he continued to run, it would be a battle of attrition with Flying Sand Loose Cultivator. It would depend on whether the sandstorm would catch up to him first, or if Flying Sand Loose Cultivator wouldn't be able to hold on first. Wang Daoyuan didn't like to gamble with his life. Rather than gambling with his life, he might as well use his ultimate move and break through the sandstorm. He condensed Earth attribute spiritual power and used the Seal of Kirin. The Seal of Kirin also had a suppressive ability. The suppressive power of the 5-element seal was strengthened by the Seal of Kirin fusing with the other 4 artifacts. Let's try to see if the Seal of Kirin can suppress the sandstorm. The yellow Kirin seal's shadow quickly formed. Wang Daoyuan controlled the Kirin's seal to suppress the sandstorm. There was still some effect. The part of the sandstorm that was facing the Kirin's seal had its speed somewhat reduced. However, the speed of the two sides was completely unaffected. If this continues, he would be surrounded by the sandstorm. The power of a Kirin seal's shadow was only equivalent to an ordinary rank 3 spell. Wang Daoyuan didn't expect to be able to suppress the sandstorm. It was fine as long as it was effective. He once again condensed the other 4 artifacts and fused them with the Kirin seal, turning it into the 5-element seal. Even if the 5-element seal wasn't fused with the artifacts, its power could still be ranked among the top rank 4 spells. Its suppressive power was definitely not something the seal of Kirin could compare to. Once the devil seal was used, the entire sandstorm was suppressed, and its speed suddenly decreased. Flying Sand Vagabond looked at the 5 elements devil suppression seal and revealed an excited expression. He no longer used all his strength to activate the yellow gourd, but took out his life artifact. This life artifact was also a yellow seal, and its appearance was very similar to the Kirin seal. Once the seal was used, the sandstorm no longer moved forward. Instead, it gathered above Flying Sand Practitioner's head. The yellow gourd also continued to spit out yellow sand above his head. Wang Daoyuan naturally knew that this old guy had used his trump card. With the previous lesson, he knew that running away was useless. He might as well give him a fierce blow. His cultivation had broken through to the middle stage of the Zifu realm, and he had also comprehended the White Tiger's charm. The White Tiger's sword intent had also improved by quite a bit. All of these would increase the power of the 5-element seal. Right now, he really couldn't say how much power the devil seal could unleash. Summoning the Black Tortoise shield, he fused the White Tiger blade and the Black Tortoise shield into the devil seal. He also poured all the spiritual energy in his body into it. Soon after, he took out a jar of 1000-year spirit peach dew and drank a few mouthfuls. This was to prevent his spiritual energy from being exhausted after a single move, allowing him to take advantage of the situation. On Flying Sand Practitioner's side, the yellow sand that filled the sky gathered above his head, condensing into a 300-meter square seal. The life artifact in his hand also fused into the 300-meter seal. The moment they fused, a yellow light flickered, and a wave of power was emitted. Wang Daoyuan was more than 5 kilometers away from him, but he could still feel traces of the suppressive power. If he was in front of him, he probably wouldn't even have the strength to stand up. Chapter 447. The Flying Sand Sangha finished forming the seal, retrieving the yellow gourd and the flying sword under his feet. This was to use all of his spiritual energy on the 300-meter large seal. Under his control, the large seal flew towards Wang Daoyuan. The moment he was locked on by the large seal, Wang Daoyuan felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. Even his breathing was a bit rough, and the spiritual energy in his body was not flowing smoothly. The closer the seal was, the stronger the suppression. He didn't dare to delay any longer, and controlled the 5 elements devil suppression seal, smashing it towards the 300-meter large seal in the air. The 5 elements devil suppression seal was only 6 inches square, and couldn't compare to the 300-meter large seal. But after the devil suppression seal met it, Wang Daoyuan felt that the suppression was reduced by more than half. About 5 miles away from Wang Daoyuan, the devil suppression seal and the 300-meter large seal collided. However, there wasn't any big movement, and the two seals were in a stalemate in the air. After all, Wang Daoyuan's cultivation was a bit weaker, and the 5 elements devil suppression seal lacked the most crucial Kirin seal, so it was at a disadvantage in terms of suppression. When the two seals were in a stalemate, he could still feel the suppression from the 300-meter large seal. At this time, Wang Daoyuan's face was pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. On the other side, the Flying Sand Sangha was also not feeling well. he was also panting and sweating. But he still had some strength left. After all, his cultivation was higher, and his spiritual energy was more vigorous. Seeing Wang Daoyuan's appearance of not being able to hold on at any time, the flying sand Sangha smiled. His opponent could fall at any time, and he could still hold on for a while. How could he lose when he had the absolute advantage? After half a cup of tea's time, Wang Daoyuan was still holding on, and his condition had improved. The 1,000-year-old spirit peach dew he drank before was still recovering his spiritual energy. The flying sand Sangha couldn't smile anymore. His current condition was even worse than Wang Daoyuan's, and took out a wine jar. This wine jar was very small, and it looked like it could only hold half a kilogram of wine. After he opened the jar, he drank 2 small mouthfuls with a pained face, and then put the jar away. With the replenishment of the spirit wine, his condition improved after a dozen breaths. After increasing the input of spiritual power into the 300-meter large seal, the devil-vanquishing seal was forced to slowly retreat. This battle, which had been in a stalemate for a long time, entered Wang Daoyuan's favorite segment, competing for resources. Although he was at a disadvantage, as long as his opponent couldn't win quickly, he would definitely have the last laugh. Wang Daoyuan took out a large wine jar that could hold 10 jeans of wine. This jar was filled with 1,000-year-old spirit peach dew. He drank a few mouthfuls and drank more than half a caddy. Loose cultivator Flying Sand's eyelids twitched as he watched. That jar of spirit wine of his was only 700 to 800 years old, and there wasn't even half a jean left. He wasn't willing to take it out unless it was a desperate situation. The two of them weren't too far apart, and with his cultivation at the peak of the Violet Palace realm, he was able to clearly see the quality of the wine in Wang Daoyuan's hand with his divine sense. This jar of wine was definitely more than 1,000 years old. If this continued, he would definitely die. Loose cultivator Flying Sand's eyes revealed a resolute look, and the spiritual power on the 300-meter large seal also became berserk. Wang Daoyuan knew that this old fellow wanted to play ruthlessly, and immediately withdrew the devil-vanquishing seal. Unfortunately, before he could control the devil-vanquishing seal, the 300-meter large seal exploded, and the yellow sand turned into nothingness. The 5 elements devil-vanquishing seal was directly scattered, and the black tortoise shield and white tiger blade received some damage. It was even more serious than when they were acting last time. He was also implicated, and the qi and blood in his body were boiling. His meridians and dantian felt as if they were on fire. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, he felt a bit better. He promptly withdrew his 2 natal artifacts, and took out a sweet rain jade dew pill and swallowed it. On the other side, loose cultivator Flying Sand also didn't feel good. After forcefully detonating the 300-meter large seal, his earthen yellow seal also received some damage, and he was also implicated. However, his injuries were a lot lighter than Wang Daoyuan's, but his spiritual power consumption was extremely large. After swallowing a pill, he said with a smile, "You should be Wang Daoyuan, right? There are only a few mid-stage Zifu realm cultivators with penta-spiritual roots, and only you can use the 5 elements devil-vanquishing seal to such an extent. This place isn't far from the treasured Cauldron Mountain, and the matter of you defeating the Golden Core direct disciples of the Tai Sword Sect and Wind Snow Deity Palace was widely spread here." Wang Daoyuan took a deep breath, and said, "If you know too much, you won't live long. Even if you know, it's best to pretend that you don't know." Loose cultivator Flying Sand didn't mind, and took out a palm-sized earthen yellow jade pendant, and said, "You're Taoist Thunderflame's disciple, so you must have some protective treasures on you. However, I've been roaming the Mingsha plains for hundreds of years, how could I not have any protective treasures? You're also from a cultivator clan, and your ancestor is a golden core cultivator, so you should know what a treasure talisman is, right?" Wang Daoyuan naturally knew about treasure talismans. This thing was a consumable magic tool that extracted the origin of a natal artifact. Refining a treasure talisman wasn't difficult, and Zifu realm cultivators could do it, but the price was extremely high. After refining a natal artifact into a treasure talisman, even if it wasn't completely destroyed, it would still consume hundreds of years of refining. Unless the oil lamp ran out, no one would be willing to use their natal artifact to refine a treasure talisman. After all, passing down a natal artifact to a descendant wouldn't have much use, so it was better to refine it into a treasure talisman, and leave behind a life-saving treasure for the descendant. The jade pendant in loose cultivator Flying Sand's hand had an extremely strong fluctuation of spiritual energy, and it could at least display the strength of an early golden core cultivator. Wang Daoyuan also took out the purple lightning evil punishing token, and said with a smile, "I naturally know about treasure talismans, and this treasure talisman of yours can easily kill me. However, once this treasure in my hand is activated, those below golden core will definitely die. Do you want to give it a try?" Loose cultivator Flying Sand bitterly smiled, and said, "Previously, I thought too highly of myself, but I didn't expect to meet Daoist Thunderflame's disciple. The Flying Sand Bandit's muddy pond really can't raise a flood dragon like you. You and I can be considered to have no deep hatred between us, so there's no need to fight to the death. Let's turn our hostility into business, what do you think?" Both of them put away their life-saving treasures, and Wang Daoyuan also took the opportunity to heal himself with the Azure Dragon Pearl. After a few breaths of time, he stabilized his injuries, and replied, "As long as it's not a losing business, I'm willing to listen." Seeing that Wang Daoyuan had the intention to do business, Loose Cultivator Flying Sand felt relieved, and said, "Daoyu's natal artifact should be the inheritance of Daoist Fumo. The reason you came to the southern wasteland this time should be to search for Earth Essence to refine the Kirin Seal, right? I've also investigated the spiritual veins in Mingsha Plain, and there's no trace of Earth Essence. Otherwise, I would have already taken it and refined it into my natal artifact. Speaking of which, we can be considered to be of the same origin, and you should be able to see that this natal artifact of mine is related to the Kirin Seal. This seal is called the Thick Earth Devil Suppressing Seal, and it's based on the Kirin Seal. Its power and potential are far inferior to the Kirin Seal, but it's superior in that it doesn't require Earth Essence. The refinement method of this Thick Earth Devil Suppressing Seal was also obtained by exploring the cave of a predecessor. This senior lived slightly later than Daoist Fumo. By chance, he obtained Daoist Fumo's inheritance. He was an Earth attribute cultivator, and thus decided to refine the Kirin Seal as his natal artifact. Unfortunately, it's hard to find Earth Essence. Therefore, he modified the Kirin Seal to create this Thick Earth Devil Suppressing Seal. This senior had a book that recorded his life experiences, and it mentioned the process of him searching for Earth Essence. According to the book, he once found a treasured land that could nurture Earth Essence, but unfortunately, the Earth Essence had yet to take shape. Now, 7,000 to 8,000 years have passed, and the Earth Essence should have been nurtured by now. Daoyu should be interested in the location of the Earth Essence, right? When Wang Daoyuan heard this, he didn't hide his intention and directly said, "I'm not a hothead who just left the mountain. I know the rules. Just tell me what you want me to do." Loose Practitioner Flying Sand praised, "Daoyu is indeed straightforward. Then, I won't beat around the bush. I wonder if Daoyu has heard of the true Devil Blood Lotus?" Wang Daoyuan had a puzzled look on his face. He didn't have any high-level pill refinement inheritance. There were many rare spiritual plants that he didn't know about, and he had never heard of the true Devil Blood Lotus. Chapter 448. Ever since Wang Daoyuan had obtained the spiritual pearl space, he had been particularly interested in all kinds of strange spiritual plants. Seeing that he was interested in the true demonic blood lotus, Loose Cultivator Flying Sand struck while the iron was hot. This true demonic blood lotus is just like its name, related to the demon race. Legend has it that in ancient times, a high-level demon who walked the path of body refinement, brought disaster to the southern wasteland and was killed by a powerful senior. The fleshly body of the devil was buried in a place where, over the years, it turned into a mountain range. Where his blood essence gathered, a heavenly treasure like the true devil blood lotus was nurtured. The seeds of the true devil blood lotus can greatly increase the strength of the fleshly body. It can also assist in the cultivation of some body-refining techniques of devil cultivators. Wang Daoyuan said impatiently, "In your current state, you won't be thinking about refining your body. If you have any use for the true demonic blood lotus, just tell me. If there is any danger, don't hide it." Loose cultivator Flying Sand laughed bitterly and said, "You are still young and vigorous. You don't know the hardships of us. After 300 years of age, it would be difficult for one's vitality to increase without the replenishment of spirit items. After 400 years, one's qi and blood would decline rapidly. Even if there were spiritual items that could replenish qi and blood, they could only slow down the rate of deterioration. Forming the core required one to fuse their true yuan with their blood essence. Not only did one need to be at the peak of the Zifu realm, one also needed to have a sufficiently powerful qi and blood. I'm already over 400 years old now, and there's still a long way to go for my qi and blood to reach core formation. If I can't find a heavenly treasure that can strengthen my qi and blood, I will never have any hope of forming my gold core in this lifetime. This true devil blood lotus is my last hope to form my gold core." However, that mountain range was the burial ground of the devil clan. The devil qi was dense, and many devil cultivators cultivated there. Once the true demonic blood lotus bloomed, it would definitely attract a large number of competitors. With my own strength, it's impossible for me to obtain it. You can condense the 5 elements devil subduing seal, which is much stronger than my thick earth devil subduing seal when dealing with devil cultivators. Therefore, I would like to ask Daoyu for help." Wang Daoyuan pondered for a while and said, "Helping you obtain the true devil blood lotus, what reward can I obtain? Don't tell me that you only have the earth essence. Although the southern wasteland is vast, level 4 earth elemental spiritual veins are not as common as cabbages. If he searched one by one, he would definitely find them. Getting the information from you will only save me some time. I don't lack time, and the earth essence won't hinder me from forming my gold core. I can find it whenever I want." It was not worth risking his life for such a piece of information. Moreover, you haven't mentioned the strength of these demonic cultivators. If by any chance there is a golden core devil cultivator, my life will be gone. Loose cultivator Flying Sand smiled apologetically. Naturally, it's impossible to only have information about the earth essence. I can give a portion of the true devil blood lotus to Daoyu. In addition, although Daoyu's 5 elements devil subduing seal is powerful, it has very few transformations. The 5 elements devil smiting seal you've obtained should be an inheritance left behind by venerable devil smiting in his early years, or an incomplete one. The inheritance I received was left behind by him in his later years. In addition to the most basic sacrificial refining method, there were also the experiences that Master Devil Vanquishing Demon had gained over the past several hundred years. He had also created some spells that could be used together with the magic tool. If Daoyu obtained these things, his strength would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. With Daoyu's talent, he would be able to create even more powerful spells in the future. However, that would require several hundred years of exploration. With Venerable Devil Vanquishing Demon's inheritance, he would be able to save several hundred years of time. The information about the earth essence could only save him a few dozen years of time. Daoyu didn't care about it. This inheritance could save Daoyu a few hundred years of time. How could Daoyu not care about it? As for the devil cultivators, Daoyu hadn't been in the southern wasteland for long, so he might not know much about them. Golden core devil cultivators would definitely not reveal themselves easily. As long as a golden core devil cultivator appeared, the divine weapon pavilion and the Tai sword sect would send experts to eliminate them. According to the ancient legends, the 4 top forces were left behind by the ancient Almighty to guard the 4 directions and protect the human race. The mission of the Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Tai Sword sect was to suppress the devil race and devil cultivators in the southern wasteland. Golden Core devil cultivators would not dare to reveal themselves casually. The 5 Elements Devil Smiting Seal was created to suppress devil cultivators. With Daoyu's Devil Smiting Seal, even I wouldn't be able to defeat it easily. No devil cultivator below the Golden Core realm would be able to defeat Daoyu's Devil Smiting Seal. This true Devil Blood Lotus is a heavenly treasure for Zifu realm cultivators like us. To Golden Core devil cultivators, it's just a slightly stronger supplementary spiritual item for body refinement. There's no need for them to risk their lives for such a useless item. Hearing this, Wang Daoyuan was tempted. When a cultivator refined a destiny dermic artifact, it was not as simple as nurturing it. It also needed to be improved continuously. The inheritance that perfected Devil Smiting Master had left behind in his later years was naturally more advanced than the one in his hands. Just based on this point alone, Wang Daoyuan could not refuse. Furthermore, the 5 Elements Devil Smiting Seal inheritance that he had received was incomplete. Although his master had helped to restore it, his master was not a cultivator with 5 spirit roots. The 5 Elements Devil Smiting Seal that he had restored might not be the most suitable for him. It was inevitable that he would have to improve it in the future. Perfected Devil Smiting Master's insights would be of great help in modifying the 5 Elements Devil Smiting Seal in the future. Not to mention those dermic arts that could rapidly increase one's strength. As long as a Golden Core Devil Cultivator did not attack, it would not be a problem to protect his life. Without any danger to his life and with such a generous reward, it was worth a gamble. Wang Daoyuan asked, "I can't refuse Daoyu's offer. I'll agree to it. May I know when the true demonic blood lotus will mature?" Since Wang Daoyuan agreed to it, Loose Cultivator Flying Sand's face was also full of joy. He quickly said, "The true demonic blood lotus will mature in about 30 years. Daoyu's talent is extraordinary and he doesn't lack resources. It's not impossible for his cultivation to advance further in 30 years. At that time, I'm afraid that no one below the Golden Core stage will be a match for Daoyu." With a sufficient supply of purple rhyme pills in 30 years, there was indeed a chance for him to cultivate to the late stage of the Zifu realm. If he could find a metal attribute Spirit Fire, his cultivation speed would be even faster, and his cultivation might even approach the peak stage of the Zifu realm. However, one must always give a deposit when doing business. He asked with a smile, "I'll agree to this business, but Daoyu can't just make empty promises, right? If you want me to work, you have to give me some benefits. Why don't you tell me the location of the Earth Essence first? After I refine the Seal of Kirin, my strength will increase greatly, and I'll have more confidence in dealing with devil cultivators." Loose Cultivator Flying Sand looked at him with a fake smile. "Daoyu, do you think I'm an idiot? I've run amok in Mingsha Plain for hundreds of years. What kind of tricks haven't I seen? Daoyu want to fool me? You're still lacking. The Seal of Kirin is the core of the 5 Elements Devil Subduing Seal. If Daoyu refined the Seal of Kirin, he wouldn't even need the 5 Elements Devil Subduing Seal to take me down easily. If he used the 5 Elements Devil Subduing Seal, I'm afraid my talisman treasure would only be able to heavily injure you, and not take your life. At that time, my life would be in your hands. Daoyu can take all the benefits for yourself after taking my soul search. Why would you still need to cooperate with me? However, I can give you the deposit. It just so happens that Daoyu's White Tiger Blade is extremely powerful. I can give you the complete White Tiger Blade refinement technique and the technique. However, Daoyu can't take the benefits for free. My qi and blood have already started to decline rapidly. If I don't have any spiritual items to suppress it, I might not be able to form a golden core even if I obtain the true devil blood lotus 30 years later. You're Taoist Lei Yan's disciple and also an alchemist. It shouldn't be hard for you to get some rank 3 spiritual items that can replenish qi and blood. Give me 50 blood essence pills, and I'll give you all the inheritance of the white tiger blade. Blood essence pills were rank 3 middle grade pills. Wang Daoyuan had seen them before. Back then, Taoist Lei Yan gave Zhao Liang a few to build his foundation. This thing had an extremely powerful ability to replenish qi and blood. It was also very useful for Zifu realm cultivators. He could refine it himself now, but he just needed to kill some demonic beasts and extract their blood essence. Wang Daoyuan still bargained, at most 30 pills. Searching for the materials will waste a lot of time and delay my cultivation. Loose cultivator Flying Sand pondered for a moment and nodded. Chapter 449. Seeing that Flying Sand Wanderer agreed, Wang Daoyuan threw a communication jade talisman to him. I don't have any ready-made pills on hand, nor do I have enough materials. When I get the blood essence pill, I'll send you a message. This communication jade talisman can receive messages within 20,000 miles. Flying Sand Wanderer took the talisman and left. He had been doing business for a few hundred years and had too many enemies. Now, he didn't have much spiritual power left, his natal magic tool was damaged, and he was injured. If he continued to stay here, his life would be in danger if he encountered an enemy. Wang Daoyuan returned to the small valley of the Huang Jagged Mountain and sealed the cave before returning to the Singing Sand Market. He didn't return to the Clear River Tavern, but to the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Yuanqing saw that he was heavily injured and hurriedly brought him to the backyard of the store, to his own cave. He took out a bottle of sweet rain jade pills for Wang Daoyuan and asked, "Junior Marshal Brother Daoyuan, who injured you so heavily? I'll send a message to Master and ask him to send a few people to help you vent your anger." Wang Daoyuan waved his hand and said, "Senior Marshal Brother, you don't have to do this. I was forced to become a son-in-law. I didn't agree, so I fought with them. My skills were inferior and I was at a disadvantage. Actually, I didn't suffer heavy injuries, but I used too much spiritual power. This injury was caused by the damage to my natal magic tool, so it's not that serious." Hearing this, Yuanqing was relieved and joked, "Junior Marshal Brother's luck with women is not bad. You've only been in the southern wasteland for a few days and you've already gotten into trouble. There are very few women in the southern wasteland. You have a daughter who can't get married? Which family is recruiting a son-in-law?" Wang Daoyuan also replied with a smile, "The leader of the Flying Sand Bandits, Flying Sand Wanderer. He's not weak at all. I tried my best, but I still couldn't take him down." Yuanqing couldn't believe it. Flying Sand Wanderer is a peak Zifu realm cultivator. He has a flying sand gourd, which he used in the Singing Sand Plain. Yellow sand gourd can also be used with his natal magic tool. Even the peak Zifu realm wanderer Wild Sand Wanderer is not his match. You've offended him, you won't have a good time in the future. I'm not strong enough to help you vent your anger. It's better to find someone to teach him a lesson. Wang Daoyuan naturally didn't need him to call for help, so he refused, "Senior Marshal Brother, you don't have to do this. I didn't win against him, but he also suffered some injuries. After he found out about my identity, he reconciled with me. Now, I've made a deal with him. I'll give him 30 essence blood pills in exchange for some of Venerable Devil Vanquishing's legacies. I don't have any ready-made pills in my hands, and I can't buy any supplementary medicines in the Singing Sand Market either." He could only ask his senior brother to help him find it. Auxiliary herbs and ready-made blood essence pills were fine. I'm currently injured, and my natal Dharma artifact is also heavily damaged. It's not safe to stay anywhere else, so I'll stay here to recuperate. He Yuanqing smiled and said, 30 blood essence pills are a small matter. I'll talk to a few senior brothers I'm familiar with, and they'll be here soon. As for the Immortal's cave, it doesn't matter. We're all fellow disciples, so we naturally have to help each other. You just stay here and recuperate. I'm busy, so I don't need this cave. I'll go and contact them about the blood essence pill. You take care of your injuries. After saying that, he left the Immortal's cave. 10 days later, Wang Daoyuan's injuries were completely healed. He Yuanqing also came to the Immortal's cave with 7 pill bottles and said, Junior brother, I've found the blood essence pills you wanted. Wang Daoyuan took the pill bottles and asked, how many spirit stones did you spend? We're blood brothers, and you still have a group of juniors to feed. I can't let you suffer losses when I ask for your help. He Yuanqing replied, it's not that I'm being courteous, but this blood essence pill was given to me by my master. I didn't have to pay a single spirit stone. When my master heard that you were injured, he wanted to come over and kill Flying San Sanren with his own hands. Later, he didn't come after knowing the whole story. He also told me to tell you that the next time you encounter such a situation, you can use the Purple Thunder Evil Punishing Token to kill him. Master still has more of these things, so you can go and get more when you're done. I still have things to deal with in the shop, so I won't accompany you. Wang Daoyuan wasn't in a hurry to send a message to Flying San Sanren. Instead, he continued to stay in He Yuanqing's Immortal's cave to nurture his magic tools. 2 months later, the White Tiger Blade and Black Tortoise Shield were repaired. He sent a message to Flying San Sanren, asking him to meet him at Huang Jagged Mountain. Before leaving, he left He Yuanqing a bottle of Meridian Shielding pills. No matter how good their relationship was, he couldn't let him help for free. Riding his sword, he swaggered out of Singing Sand Market and arrived at Huang Jagged Mountain. Flying San Sanren was even more proactive than him. He was already waiting in the small valley. Seeing Wang Daoyuan coming, he quickly greeted him. Wang Daoyuan took out 3 pill bottles and said, the blood essence pills you wanted are all here. Where's the thing I wanted? Flying San Sanren took out 4 animal skin pages and threw one of them to Wang Daoyuan, it's all here. Take a look and see if it's real or not. Wang Daoyuan took the animal skin page and poured his divine sense into it. This animal skin page was the refining method for the White Tiger Blade. Compared to Wang Daoyuan's current White Tiger Blade, the shape of the White Tiger Blade wasn't much different. However, there were still many improvements in the tool pattern. It was very obvious that they were of the same origin. Since there was no problem with the item, Wang Daoyuan threw the 3 pill bottles to Flying San Sanren. Soon after, Flying San Sanren threw the remaining 3 animal skin pages to Wang Daoyuan. Daoyu is indeed trustworthy. This old man still has a lot of things to arrange, so I won't keep you company. Daoyu, please don't forget about the matter of the true demonic blood lotus 30 years later. Finishing his words, he left this place and headed east. Wang Daoyuan also returned to Singing Sand Market. How could he let go of the new inheritance he had obtained? Among these 4 animal skin pages, other than the one that recorded the refining method, the other 3 pages recorded the White Tiger sword art and the sword cultivation technique. The White Tiger sword art included the sword controlling technique, the basic offensive and defensive techniques, as well as the method to comprehend the White Tiger sword intent. There were also many improvements in these things. Cultivating this new White Tiger sword art could actually increase one's strength. Although Venerable Fu Mo created the White Tiger Blade, he could be considered a very strong sword cultivator. However, he was the same as Wang Daoyuan. He didn't believe that a single sword could break 10,000 techniques, so he didn't plan to major in the sword Dao. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used the Kirin seal as the core of the 5 elements Fu Mo seal. Therefore, Venerable Fu Mo didn't pay much attention to the white tiger blade. There were only two sword cultivation techniques. One of them was the shadow sword art that Wang Daoyuan had seen before. Back then, during the duel between the Netherworld sect and the Cruel Sun Palace, Lei Wudao used the shadow sword art to block Daoyu's hundreds of feather blades. The shadow sword art was the most advanced sword cultivation technique he had ever seen. However, Wang Daoyuan wasn't very interested in this technique. Although the shadow sword art was strong, it required one to visualize 10 famous ancient swords and comprehend their charm to resonate with them. Only then could one unleash their full strength. It took so much effort to comprehend the charm of the white tiger blade. He had a lot of things to do. How could he have the time to comprehend 10 famous ancient swords? Venerable Fu Mo's thoughts were exactly the same as Wang Daoyuan's. He couldn't be bothered to visualize the famous ancient swords. Instead, he created another sword cultivation technique based on the shadow sword art. The method of casting this technique wasn't much different from the shadow sword art. It was just that the visualization diagram had been changed. The modified technique was called the Sword Shadow Divine Light technique. The Sword Shadow Divine Light technique didn't require one to visualize the famous ancient swords. One only needed to combine one's sword intent to condense 10 illusions of the white tiger blade. These illusions were like clones of the white tiger blade. They possessed part of the white tiger blade's power and could be used to attack and defend. They could also cast simple sword cultivation techniques. The power of the illusions depended on the strength of the cultivator's sword intent. This technique was extremely suitable for Wang Daoyuan. He didn't need to spend too much time to master it. The biggest flaw of the Sword Shadow Divine Light technique was that it consumed too much spirit energy. To Wang Daoyuan, this wasn't a flaw at all. With enough spirit wine, he didn't need to worry about how much spirit energy he consumed. Moreover, Venerable Fu Mo had also suggested some ideas. The 10 illusions of the white tiger blade could be combined into a sword formation to unleash even greater power. However, he was busy in his later years looking for treasures and trying to form Yuanying. He didn't continue to study it in depth. Chapter 450. Sword formations were one of the most powerful Dharma spells among sword cultivators. Sword cultivators who specialized in sword formations usually had a set of magic longswords that complemented their natal magic tools. However, sword formations were rarely passed down. Apart from refining the natal magic tool, he also had to spend a large amount of time and energy to nurture the set of magic tools. Therefore, he didn't plan to cultivate sword formations. Now that he had Venerable Devil Vanquishing Demon's Sword Shadow Divine Light art, he could use the white tiger blade to unleash sword formations. If he could obtain a suitable sword formation inheritance, he could cultivate it. It wasn't suitable for him to cultivate in the Clear River Tavern's wing. However, it wasn't a big problem to only condense sword shadows without attacking. He took out 2 sets of formation discs and placed them in the room. These 2 sets of formation discs were a soundproof formation and a spirit-forbidding formation that could prevent spiritual awareness from probing. This Sword Shadow Divine Light art was indeed something passed down by an ancient powerhouse. Although it might have been damaged, repaired, and modified countless times, its foundation was still very solid. Wang Daoyuan used half a month to successfully condense the white tiger blade's sword shadows. However, although his sword shadows had the appearance of the white tiger blade, they were still very illusory. One could tell at a glance that they weren't real. He couldn't test their power for now. He would give it a try the next time he went out. He didn't cultivate the newly obtained white tiger sword art. He also didn't modify the tool patterns of the white tiger blade according to the newly obtained refining method. Venerable Flying Sand wasn't a trustworthy person. Who knew if he would leave any tricks in the inheritance? The current refining method of the White Tiger blade and White Tiger sword art had been checked by his master and confirmed that there were no problems. There was no need to take the risk of being killed by others just to increase the power of the White Tiger blade. The newly obtained inheritance could only be cultivated in addition to the accompanying arts. The other things could only be used as a reference to improve the 5 elements devil vanquishing seal in the future. Wang Daoyuan continued to stay in the Clear River Tavern. Apart from cultivating, he also inquired about the situation of the sandstorm. There wasn't any earth essence here. The only thing he was looking for was the earth attribute natal feather. The earth attribute demonic bird was extremely rare. There might be individuals with natal feather among the sand-chasing hawks. Naturally, he couldn't let them go. The information obtained from Know-It-All was still too rough. It only recorded the topography, products, and forces of various places, but it did not record where sandstorms were prone to occur. After asking around in the Clear River Tower for a period of time, he found out that the place where sandstorms most frequently occurred in the Singing Sand Plains was the Singing Sand Ridge at the edge of the Wild Sand Bandits area of activity. The sandstorm on the Singing Sand Ridge was incessant. The sound of the sandstorm could be heard day and night. Therefore, it was named the Singing Sand Ridge. The name of the Singing Sand Plain also came from the Singing Sand Ridge. After getting this information, Wang Daoyuan rode the Heaven Fiend Life Extinction Sword and left the Singing Sand Market, heading towards the Singing Sand Ridge that was 10,000 miles southwest. When they were still more than 100 miles away from the Singing Sand Ridge, they could already hear the sound of wind howling like the wailing of ghosts. When they got closer, they could hear the sound of sand hitting each other. The name Singing Sand Ridge was indeed very appropriate. As far as the eye could see, the Singing Sand Ridge was like a yellow dragon that was meandering in the southwest direction. At this time, more than 300 miles south of Wang Daoyuan, there was a sandstorm moving from west to east. Where there was a sandstorm, there would definitely be traces of sand-chasing harriers. He rode his sword towards the south. After arriving behind the sandstorm, he did find a few sand-chasing harriers. However, these sand-chasing harriers were all 3rd level lower grade and did not have a life source feather. Wang Daoyuan did not go forward to chase them away. He only maintained a distance of about 50 miles from the sandstorm. At this distance, he could observe the situation of the sandstorm with his divine sense. If new sand-chasing harriers joined in, he would be able to discover them at any time. As time passed, the sand-chasing harriers behind the sandstorm continuously cast earth attribute magic, pushing the sandstorm forward. The scale of the sandstorm also became bigger and bigger. The bigger the sandstorm, the more sand-chasing harriers would be attracted. With more sand-chasing harriers, the scale of the sandstorm would also become bigger. In this way, just like a rolling snowball, the sandstorm would continue to grow bigger. Unless there was a tall mountain blocking the way, the entire sandstorm would sweep all the way through. All the plants along the way, as well as the spiritual beasts and spiritual insects that did not escape in time, would be swallowed by the sandstorm and become the sand-chasing harriers' delicacies. The sand-chasing harriers played an important role in Mingsha Plain's current scale of tens of thousands of miles. Wang Daoyuan followed the sandstorm for a day. The road ahead was smooth, and the sandstorm would continue to advance for a long time. Along the way, more sand-chasing harriers joined in. Now, there were already more than 50 sand-chasing harriers behind the sandstorm. However, these sand-chasing harriers did not have a life source feather. Suddenly, from the south of the sandstorm, a 3rd-level middle-grade sand-chasing harrier flew over. This fella's wingspan was 20 feet, far exceeding that of an ordinary sand-chasing harrier. Most importantly, this fella had a few feathers on its head. The longest feather was 1 foot long and 5 to 6 inches long. Other sand-chasing harriers also had feathers on their heads, but they were relatively short, only 2 to 3 inches long. This fella had such a long feather on its head, so it was very likely to have a life source feather. Wang Daoyuan closed the distance between him and the sand-chasing harrier, and his divine sense observed it more clearly. This feather contained rich earth attribute spiritual energy, and when this sand-chasing harrier cast its innate magic, the spiritual energy fluctuations in the feather were obviously strengthened. This was the characteristic of a life source feather. The third life source feather was about to be in his hands. As for these sand-chasing harriers, they were a group of earth attribute demonic birds. Their attack power and speed were terrible, and they were not a threat to his life. He tried his best to suppress his spiritual energy fluctuations, took out the soul-restricting silk cloak, put it on, and slowly approached the demonic birds. This group of sand-chasing harriers were all focused on finding food in the sandstorm, and did not pay attention to the danger behind them. Soon, Wang Daoyuan was within 10 miles of the sand-chasing harriers. After all, the sand-chasing harriers were a type of bird of prey, and they had to pick out food in the sandstorm, so their eyesight was naturally good. One of the sand-chasing harriers happened to turn around and discovered Wang Daoyuan. It let out a sharp cry, and the other sand-chasing harriers also discovered his existence, and immediately surrounded him. Wang Daoyuan took out the flaming wind kite. The sand-chasing harriers were not fast enough, but riding the flaming wind kite, his speed was far faster than them. He led the group of sand-chasing harriers in circles in the air. With a group of sand-chasing harriers gathered together, it was not good for him to turn around and kill the target. Fortunately, these guys were ferocious beasts and not demonic beasts, and their intelligence was low. Wang Daoyuan released hundreds of soul-chasing bees to lure them out. As expected, the sand-chasing harriers fell for it, and most of them went to chase after the soul-chasing bees. Only the middle grade 3 sand-chasing harrier and a few low grade 3 sand-chasing harriers were still chasing after him. The opportunity was here. Wang Daoyuan suddenly turned around and attacked the target with the white tiger blade. The middle grade 3 sand-chasing harrier did not even have time to react before its neck was cut off. Just as Wang Daoyuan was about to retrieve the sand-chasing harrier's corpse, a cold wind blew over, and a yellow figure flashed by and snatched the sand-chasing harrier's corpse. This person was not old, only a little over 100 years old, and had a cultivation of middle-stage Violet Palace realm. Before he left, he arrogantly shouted, "Thank you, Daoyu, for the treasure." Wang Daoyuan rode the wind-fire flying kite and chased after him. He angrily said, "Hand over your natal feather now, and I'll spare your life." The person disdainfully said, "Once it's in my hands, it's mine. In this Mingsha plain, no one has ever dared to threaten me like this." Wang Daoyuan was already burning with rage at this time. He angrily shouted, "No matter who you are, you'll die for daring to intercept me. Even if you're a Golden Core direct disciple, you'll still die." This guy was also a wind attribute cultivator, and he was riding on a flying boat like flying magic tool. Its speed was not slower than the wind-fire flying kite, and Wang Daoyuan could not catch up to him in a short time. The two of them, one chasing and one fleeing, quickly flew over 1,000 miles to the west. An extremely intimidating roar was heard. "Who dares to bully my only son in this old man's territory?" Chapter 451. Wang Daoyuan scanned with his spiritual sense and discovered that this person was a peak Zifu realm cultivator. Since this was his territory, then this person should be the leader of the Wild Sand Bandits, the Wild Sand Vagabond. The cultivators of Mingsha Plain publicly acknowledged that Wanderer Wild Sand strength was weaker than Wanderer Flying Sands, and Wanderer Flying Sand strength. Wang Daoyuan naturally wasn't afraid of him, replying, "Your son stole something from me. If you hand it over now, I'll turn around and leave. If you don't hand it over, you won't be able to protect him with your abilities." The wild sand vagabond could also see that Wang Daoyuan was a cultivator from the outside world who had come to gain experience. He wasn't unreasonable, instead asking his son, Tian-yi, what did you steal from him? Tian-yi replied, Father, I took an earth-type life-bound feather. With this item, you can refine a magic tool to deal with the flying sand vagabond. Besides, the place where he hunts is our territory. It's clear that he wants to steal from us. Hearing that his son had obtained an earth-type life-bound feather, the wild sand vagabond's expression immediately changed. He cupped his hands towards Wang Daoyuan, saying, Daoyu, I indeed need this item. Besides, Daoyu hunted in my territory. Naturally, I also have a share of the prey that he obtained. How about this, I'll compensate you with some spirit stones, and we'll let this matter rest. Wang Daoyuan sneered, what a coincidence, I also need this life-bound feather. Sir, you're not a hothead in Mingsha Plains. You should know that there are some people you can't afford to offend. Don't throw away your hundreds of years of foundation just for a life-bound feather. Wang Daoyuan still had some self-awareness. Last time, when he fought the flying sand vagabond, he was able to exchange blows with him because he was willing to drink spiritual wine. If he didn't rely on resources, his strength would still be inferior to these vagabonds. Right now, he really wasn't a match for the father and son duo. This was also the territory of the wild sand bandits. Once they got tangled up, it would be very easy for them to gang up on him. It would be best to directly scare the wild sand vagabond into handing over the earth-type life-bound feather and settle this peacefully. He took out the purple lightning vanquishing order and said, once this item is activated, no one below the golden core stage can escape. Hand over the natal feather. Otherwise, both you and your father will die here. Vagabond Wild Sand laughed, Daoyu really isn't an ordinary person. You should be a Jindan direct disciple. If you want to scare me with this thing, you're still lacking. Then, he took out a yellow circular token with a diameter of about 3 inches. This was also a talisman treasure, but its spiritual energy fluctuation was much weaker than flying sand wanderers. Its might was much stronger than the full-force strike of a peak Violet Palace realm cultivator, but it was still far inferior to the full-force strike of an initial-stage Golden Core realm cultivator. It was probably because it had been used many times and did not have much spiritual energy left. Even so, he still had the ability to kill Wang Daoyuan instantly. The purple lightning evil punishing token only had the ability to attack and had no defensive abilities. Although he could kill Wanderer Wildzan and his son in a head-on clash, it would be difficult for him to escape death. Although the earth attribute natal tail feather was precious, it was not to the point where he would trade his life for it. Wang Daoyuan laughed, although this talisman treasure isn't strong, it can indeed kill me. Since Daoyu wants to renege on my things, then be prepared to lose your several hundred years of foundation. Before he finished speaking, he urged the firestorm flying kite to escape. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. If he could not take them down, he would have to ask for help. Of course, there was no need to ask for help from the Divine Weapon Pavilion. The flying sand bandits were excellent helpers. Fleeing east to Huangjiagu Mountain, he sent a message to Vagabond Flying Sand, wanting to discuss a big business deal with him. Vagabond Flying Sand naturally knew that Wang Daoyuan's big business deal was absolutely not a small matter. He hurriedly rushed to Huangjiagu Mountain. After seeing Wang Daoyuan, he hurriedly asked, what kind of business does Daoyu want to do? Wang Daoyuan directly threw out the bait, do you want to kill Vagabond Wild Sand and annex the Wild Sand Bandits? Hearing this, Vagabond Flying Sand's eyes stared straight, I've been thinking about it for several hundred years. Ever since I opened the Violet Palace, I've always been at odds with Vagabond Wild Sand. Although I'm stronger than him, this old guy also has some trump cards. I also don't dare to fight him head-on, so as to avoid both sides suffering. What, did he offend you? Wang Daoyuan did not hide it and replied, his son stole something from me. When I went to ask for it, he took out a talisman treasure to threaten me. There was no need for me to risk my life with him, so I withdrew. That talisman treasure of his isn't much. With the two of us working together, relying on the power of the evil subduing seal and the thick earth evil suppressing seal, it shouldn't be a problem to take it head on. At that time, he'll be meat on the chopping board. Won't he be at our mercy? I won't stay in Mingsha Plain for a long time. Exterminating the wild sand bandits is just to take back the things that were stolen and some rare spirit items. Wealth, territory, and manpower, won't they all fall into your hands? Vagabond Flying Sand was moved. He wanted to exterminate the wild sand bandits and had thought about it for several hundred years. He originally wanted to wait until he formed his golden core before dealing with this great enemy. But how could forming his golden core be that easy? Even if he obtained the true devil blood lotus, he might not be able to condense the embryonic form of his golden core. Even if he passed this hurdle, he would still have to face the golden core heavenly tribulation. Most of the cultivators who failed to form their golden core were struck to death by the golden core heavenly tribulation. Now, he didn't need to gamble on the success of forming his golden core and had the opportunity to fulfill his long-cherished wish of several hundred years. How could he not be moved? He pondered for a long time and nodded, I'm willing to do this. It's just that this vagabond wild sand strength isn't weak. His lair also has a low-grade Tier 4 array. Although it's just an array disk, we don't have the ability to break it. After a long time, even if we can take down the wild sand bandits, we'll suffer heavy losses. Mingsha Plain isn't just limited to our two forces. There are also several small forces in the south. If the casualties are too great, others will take advantage of it. At that time, I won't even be able to protect my original territory. His apprehension was actually reasonable. Vagabond Wild Sands and Vagabond Flying Sands forces were about the same. Even if Wang Daoyuan was added, they still wouldn't be able to win easily. Wang Daoyuan asked, there are several bandit groups in this Mingsha Plain. Who can you and Vagabond Wild Sand rope in? Vagabond Flying Sand sneered, rope in my ass. Usually, I can't wait to kill my opponents. How can I rope in anyone? The bandits in Mingsha Plain are all one family. They all have blood feuds with each other. There's basically no possibility of cooperation. Wang Daoyuan said helplessly, don't you know that harmony breeds wealth? If you offend everyone, aren't you afraid that the other bandit groups will join hands to deal with you? Vagabond Flying Sand didn't care, everyone is like this. They all want to kill each other. I've never heard of any bandit groups cooperating. This group of bandits weren't any good people. If they cooperated, they'd only be messing with each other. They might as well do it alone. He sighed and said, since roping in a few to fight one isn't reliable, then we can only use the decapitation tactic. How about this, you bring a few experts and follow me to the wild sand bandits' territory to set up an ambush. I'll go provoke the wild sand bandits. As long as they show themselves, I'll kill a few for fun. I'll force the vagabond wild sand out, then you guys come out and surround him. As long as we kill the vagabond wild sand bandits will be leaderless. Swallowing them will be a piece of cake. Vagabond Flying Sand nodded and said, your method isn't bad. We can give it a try. However, I'm still afraid that you'll cooperate with the vagabond wild sand to plot against me. Wang Daoyuan sneered, my master already knows about the matter of you fighting with me last time. If I hadn't persuaded him, he would have personally come to slap you to death. If I wanted to kill you, would I need to plot against you? Or do you think that talisman of yours can threaten my master? Hearing these words, Vagabond Flying Sand broke out in cold sweat. Venerable Lei Yan's strength was at the peak of the half-step Yuanying realm. Fortunately, they had reconciled last time. Otherwise, if Venerable Lei Yen personally came, his lair's low-grade Tier 4 array would be just a piece of paper in front of him. The talisman treasure that he treated as his lifeblood could be destroyed with a puff of air. He hurriedly said, "I'm sincerely cooperating with you. You must not let Venerable Lei Yen take care of me. Regarding the matter of dealing with the wild sand bandits, we'll do as you say. I'll go back and gather people. Let's deal with the vagabond wild sand together." Chapter 452. Flying Sand left this place. Half a day later, he arrived on a flying boat. Aside from Flying Sand, there were also 5 Zifu disciples on the flying boat. 2 of them were late-stage Zifu disciples and 3 were middle-stage Zifu disciples. The 6 of them disembarked from the flying boat. Flying Sand put away the flying boat and laughed. "Wang Daoyu, these 5 brothers are my strongest subordinates in terms of fighting ability. With the 2 of us here, it won't take much effort to take down wild sand." Wang Daoyuan nodded. "We have enough manpower. You have fought with the wild sand bandits for hundreds of years. You should understand their situation very well. Where should we ambush wild sand?" Flying Sand said without hesitation, "Definitely to the north of Wind-Fixing Mountain. Wind-Fixing Mountain is more than 2,000 li north of Singing Sand Ridge. It is a tall mountain that blocks the sandstorms. North of the mountain, there are no sandstorms. Wind-Fixing Mountain also has a high-level 3rd-grade non-elemental spirit vein. Its spiritual energy is also very abundant. There are many springs on the mountain, forming the mountain oasis. It is one of the few places in Singing Sand Plains that has large amounts of spirit plants. Plus, there are many ores in Wind-Fixing Mountain, so there are many cultivators who go there to hunt. The wild sand bandits also attach great importance to the mountain oasis. They have 2 or 3 Zifu disciples stationed there for a long time. In Singing Sand Plains, the wild sand bandits have a much better reputation than us Flying Sand bandits. This is because they control the mountain oasis. They don't need to rob too many loose cultivators to have enough resources. If not for this, how could wild sand bandits contend against me? As long as we make a move on the mountain oasis, that old man wild sand bandits will be in a dilemma. If we ignore him, the wild sand bandits' greatest source of income will be gone. This old man is willing to sacrifice his life over his wealth. Even if he knows it is a trap, he won't easily give up on the mountain oasis. Wang Daoyuan was deeply moved by wild sand bandits' willingness to sacrifice his life over his wealth. He took out the purple thunder punishing evil writ, which clearly showed that he had a Jin Dan backer. He clearly knew that he was not someone to be trifled with, but still, for an earth-type life-bound feather, he had incurred enmity with him. Wang Daoyuan nodded. "Daoyu is right. This wild sand bandit's willingness to sacrifice his life over his wealth. I don't know much about the Shanin Oasis, so I don't know how to make a move. You should be the one to plan what to do." Loose Practitioner Flying Sand said with a smile, "If that's the case, then many thanks to Daoyu for your trust. I've wanted to take down the Shanin Oasis for a long time, and I've been investigating the oasis for years. However, this mountain oasis is too close to the wild sand bandits' lair, and I don't have the advantage in terms of manpower, so I didn't dare to make a move. We can disguise ourselves as rogue cultivators and enter the mountain oasis. All that's left is to kill and cause trouble. However, only Wang Daoyu can do this. If we make a move, we will be recognized by the wild sand bandits. That old bastard, Loose Sandstorm, will definitely bring all of his Zifu disciples to fight me to the death. By then, we'll be in danger." Daoyu, in the name of revenge, had gone to kill a Zifu disciple of the wild sand bandits. That old bastard vagrant wild sand wouldn't have brought too many people with him. Only then would we have a chance to kill him. This plan was similar to Wang Daoyuan's idea, so he naturally had no objections. Everyone split up, disguising themselves and entering the mountain oasis one after another. Wang Daoyuan suppressed his power to the early Zifu disciple level, then entered the oasis on his sword. From afar, he could see more than 10 rivers, large and small, flowing north from Wind-Calming Mountain. The oasis was located on both sides of these rivers. The further downstream one went, the less river water there was. Finally, it dried up, and the oasis disappeared. The entire oasis was roughly 300 kilometers wide from east to west, and the length of the river from north to south was related to the length of the river. The longest was 2,000 kilometers, while the shortest was 1,000 kilometers. This oasis couldn't be considered very large, but the wild sand bandits didn't have the ability to carefully manage it, and so they treated the rogue cultivators like sheep. Foundation establishment cultivators would monitor the entire oasis from above. When they discovered that any rogue cultivator had made a great harvest, they would notify the Zifu disciples stationed here, who would then go and collect some of the treasures. After Wang Daoyuan entered the oasis, he had originally wanted to find some valuable spiritual-type items. Unfortunately, the spiritual-type plants here were only of the middle or low-grade second rank. The wild sand bandits were careless in their management, and the high-grade spiritual-type plants they had were all snatched away by the rogue cultivators. The rogue cultivators who came here to try their luck didn't aim for spiritual-type plants, but for ores and ferocious beasts. There were quite a few stones in the riverbed that had been washed down from Wind-Calming Mountain. It was very likely that there were refining materials hidden inside. The environment of the Wind-Calming Mountain oasis was considered excellent in the entire Songsha Plains. Ferocious beasts from other places always liked to run here. Because of this, although there were many cultivators hunting here, they didn't kill all the ferocious beasts. Wang Daoyuan didn't have much interest in the ferocious beasts, so he found a large river and flew close to the river's surface to see if he could find any rare refining materials. He didn't want to find trouble, but trouble came knocking on his door. While he was honestly searching for refining materials in the river, a spider with a diameter of 1 foot jumped down from a large tree on the shore and pounced towards Wang Daoyuan. This spider was a low-grade third-rank spiritual-type insect. The color of its body was constantly changing. When he used his spiritual sense to observe it, he found that it was faintly discernible. This should be a phantom spirit wolf spider. It could avoid the detection of spiritual sense and change its color according to the surrounding environment. It was extremely poisonous. Wang Daoyuan didn't feel like entangling with it. He took out the soul-extinguishing bell and gently activated it. The phantom spirit wolf spider was stunned for a moment. Underneath Wang Daoyuan's feet, the terminating life sword flashed with a cold light. A sword beam flew out and pierced the phantom spirit wolf spider's head. It didn't even have time to struggle before it died. Wang Daoyuan put its corpse into the space inside his spiritual pearl and continued to search for spiritual items. All of this was seen by the Foundation establishment cultivators who were monitoring this place. Wang Daoyuan also didn't have any intention to hide. After half a cup of tea's time, a middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator flew over on his sword. He blocked Wang Daoyuan's path 1,000 feet away and said with a smile, "Daoyu's harvest isn't small. It's just that this Wind-Calming Mountain oasis is Wanderer Wild Sands territory. Daoyu's harvest here, so we can't just go hungry." Wang Daoyuan said with a smile, "I know the rules." Afterwards, he sent his divine sense into the storage pouch at his waist, acting as if he was looking for something. Seeing that he was so tactful, the middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator relaxed his guard. At this moment, Wang Daoyuan suddenly took out the white tiger blade and attacked him. To a Zifu realm cultivator, a distance of 1,000 feet could be considered very close. The middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator was greatly alarmed and hurriedly took out a silver longsword to block. Unfortunately, how could a hasty attack compare to Wang Daoyuan's long-planned attack? The two swords clashed, and the silver longsword was cut into two. The middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator was also given a chance to catch his breath and dodge the white tiger blade. Wang Daoyuan recalled the white tiger blade and held it in a reverse grip. Using the cloud mist evasion, he flew past the middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator. As the two passed by each other, the middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator's terrified expression froze on his face. Afterwards, his head slid down from his body. Only now did he lose control of the flying sword under his feet, and his body fell into the river. The remaining half of the broken sword in his hand was cut in half. Seeing this, the Foundation Establishment cultivator in the sky immediately took out a jade talisman and crushed it. Wang Daoyuan put away the long sword under the middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator's feet and the storage pouch on his waist, and threw the broken sword in his hand into the air. The Foundation Establishment cultivator who reported the news, just as he crushed the jade talisman, was cut in half by the broken sword. The flying sand bandits hiding in the oasis were also shocked speechless by Wang Daoyuan's methods. Before, when Wang Daoyuan spoke to flying sand vagabond without any courtesy, they were still a bit unconvinced. What right does a middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator have to call their boss Daoyu? If it wasn't for flying sand vagabond repeatedly reminding them before coming here, they would have definitely exchanged a few blows with Wang Daoyuan. Now, they were all convinced. Even a late-stage Zifu realm cultivator would have to fight for a long time to kill a middle-stage Zifu realm cultivator. Wang Daoyuan instantly killed a cultivator of the same stage. Although it was a sneak attack, without a strength close to the peak of the Zifu realm, it was absolutely impossible to do this. The Foundation Establishment wild sand bandits in the sky fled one after another. Wang Daoyuan was also disinclined to chase after them, and directly flew towards the setting wind mountain at the southernmost part of the oasis. The wild sand bandits guarding the mountain-in oasis were all at setting wind mountain. He came here to cause trouble, so naturally he would make things worse. Chapter 453. The place where Wang Daoyuan was at was not far from Wind-Fixing Mountain. Very quickly, he arrived at the northern foot of Wind-Fixing Mountain. A 3,000-meter tall mountain peak was covered by a defensive formation. This mountain peak was the base of the wild sand bandits in the mountain shade oasis. Within the defensive formation, an early-stage Zifu disciple shouted, "We have no enmity with Daoyu in the past. Why did Daoyu kill a member of our wild sand bandits?" Wang Daoyuan used the heaven-cleaving sword, and the white tiger blade transformed into a 300-meter-long greatsword, chopping towards the defensive barrier. Laughing, he said, "Indeed, we had no enmity in the past. But recently, we did. The wastrel son of the wild sand vagabond stole something from me. I'm not a match for the wild sand vagabond, so I can only come find you." This defensive formation was a high-grade third-rank formation. Given Wang Daoyuan's power, the chances of him breaking it by force wasn't too high. When the great sword chopped against the defensive barrier, it was bounced off. His goal was to draw the wild sand vagabond over. It didn't matter if the formation was broken or not. After learning the sword shadow godlight technique, he hadn't had the chance to test out its power. Now was the perfect time to practice. Wang Daoyuan recalled the white tiger blade and used the sword shadow godlight technique, condensing 10 illusory white tiger blades. He controlled these illusory swords to attack the defensive barrier. The illusory swords chopped against the defensive barrier, causing waves of ripples before being bounced off. The illusory swords didn't shatter, only becoming a bit dimmer. The power of these illusory swords was equivalent to a tenth of the power of the white tiger blade. 10 illusory swords attacking the same place at the same time was equivalent to the power of the white tiger blade. The actual power was perhaps a bit weaker. However, this was already extremely shocking. After all, he was a half-baked sword cultivator. A sword cultivator directly using his life-bound flying sword to attack was already an extremely powerful method of attack. He also had to take the risk of damaging his flying sword and implicating himself. If he used illusory swords to attack now, the power would be about the same. It would be more flexible, and there wouldn't be any risk of damaging magic tools. In the future, when he became more proficient in the sword shadow god light technique and increased his sword intent and white tiger aura, the power of the illusory swords would also increase. Flying Sand Loose practitioner, who was hiding at the side, looked at the 10 sword images and felt extremely shocked. Wang Daoyuan's sword shadow divine light technique was obtained from him. How long had it been? It already had such power. Loose cultivator Flying Sand sent out a middle-stage Zifu disciple to the south of Wind-Setting Mountain to investigate the movements of the wild sand bandits. After a quarter of an hour, Loose cultivator Quicksand sent mentally to Wang Daoyuan, a middle-grade third-rank flying warship has arrived from the south, as well as 3 Zifu disciples. Unfettered Wildzan was amongst them as well. The other 2 were a late-stage Zifu disciple and a middle-stage Zifu disciple. Daoyu Wang, come up with an idea on how to deal with them. Wang Daoyuan took out a jar of spirit peach dew, drank a few mouthfuls, then replied mentally, 3 Zifu disciples in a warship are equivalent to 4 middle-stage Zifu disciples. You guys are too slow. I'll be the main attacker. You're slightly stronger than Loose Sand Cultivator, so hold him back for now. Our 2 late-stage Zifu disciples will surround and attack the Wild Sand Bandits' late-stage Zifu disciple. The 3 middle-stage Zifu disciples will surround and attack the warship. I'll deal with the enemy's middle-stage Zifu disciple, while at the same time, I'll support you. As long as Loose Sand Cultivator uses a talisman treasure, I'll use the 5 elements Devil Smiting Seal, while you use the Thick Earth Devil Smiting Seal. The 2 of us should be able to take on the talisman treasure head-on. If the early-stage Zifu disciple dares to come out of the formation, I'll deal with him. Let's make things clear first. You'll be the one to deal with the talisman treasure, while I'll support you from the side. I'm all by myself here. If I'm heavily injured, I won't be able to keep my life. I'll use the Violet Thunder Devil Smiting Medallion to deal with Loose Sand Cultivator. After that, I'll use the Azure Dragon Pearl to heal you, then give you 2 Dudu pills. Your injuries will quickly heal. 10 breaths later, Loose Cultivator Quicksand sent mentally, will do as you say. Half the time it takes to brew a cup of tea passed. From the south, an explosive roar could be heard. Which scoundrel dares to behave so atrociously in my territory? A few breaths later, a 30-meter-long, 9-meter-wide flying warship appeared in the air above the mountainshade oasis. These bandits really were formidable. They even dared to use flying warships. 3 Zifu disciples flew down from the warship on their flying swords. Wang Daoyuan looked at the 3 of them, laughing. Wild Sand Daoyu, how have you been? You dared to steal from me, so you should be prepared to destroy what you've built up over hundreds of years. After speaking, he flew on his flying sword towards the Crying Sand Market. He had killed a middle-stage Zifu disciple of the Wild Sand Bandits in front of everyone's eyes. If he was able to escape unscathed, then in the future, the Loose Cultivator Quicksand wouldn't have the face to see anyone. The 3 people and the flying warship all chased after Wang Daoyuan. After flying for less than 10 kilometers, a group of people suddenly shot out from the ground, separating the 3 people and the warship. This group of people was the Flying Sand Bandits. Loose Cultivator Quicksand against Loose Cultivator Quicksand. Late-stage Zifu disciple, Loose Cultivator Quicksand against Loose Cultivator Quicksand. Loose Cultivator Quicksand subordinate, who had been sent to gather information, quickly returned. The 3 middle-stage Zifu disciples surrounded and attacked the flying warship. Wang Daoyuan controlled the firestorm kite, turning around to kill the middle-stage Zifu disciple. The loose cultivator quicksand naturally understood that he had fallen into a trap. He shouted loudly, "Draw close to the defensive formation." Hiding in the array formation was indeed their only way out. Wang Daoyuan's side had an absolute advantage in numbers. How could they let them do as they wished? The loose cultivator quicksand directly took out the flying sand gourd, spitting out yellow sand that filled the sky. The loose cultivator quicksand's technique seemed to be a dual attribute wind and earth. Using a high-level wind attribute technique, he was able to counter the flying sand gourd. The loose cultivator quicksand then took out the thick earth devil suppressing seal. Its suppressive power had a great suppressive effect on wind attribute techniques. The devil suppressing seal and the flying sand gourd complemented each other, and the loose cultivator quicksand quickly fell into a disadvantage. Wang Daoyuan caught up with the middle stage Zifu disciple of the wild sand bandits. With a wave of the white tiger blade, 10 sword shadows attacked. No matter how fast a flying sword was, it was still not faster than a sword cultivator's technique. The middle stage Zifu disciple had no choice but to take out his natal magic artifact and use his strongest technique to meet Wang Daoyuan's 10 sword shadows head-on. When the 10 sword shadows hit one place, the natal magic artifact was heavily damaged, and the sword shadows also became extremely dim. The white tiger blade flew over, cutting the damaged natal magic artifact in half. Along with it, the middle stage Zifu disciple's body was also cut in half. In just a dozen breaths of time, a middle stage Zifu disciple had already died in battle. The loose cultivator quicksand's face changed greatly. If this continued, he would not be able to escape. Taking out the earth yellow command token, he poured his spiritual sense and spiritual energy into it. The loose cultivator quicksand's face was grave. He quickly merged the yellow sand that filled the sky with the thick earth devil suppressing seal, preparing for the final attack. Wang Daoyuan also condensed the 5 elements devil suppressing seal and merged it with the white tiger blade and the black tortoise shield. Very quickly, the command token in the loose cultivator quicksand's hand transformed into a shield-shaped magic artifact with a diameter of around 5 feet. This thing was rather similar to Bai Sheng's 9 spirits white bone wheel. The edge of the shield was a sharp blade. This was a magic artifact that could be used for both offense and defense. The 5 elements devil suppressing seal and the thick earth devil suppressing seal simultaneously released a suppressive force, weakening the power of the shield. However, the effect was negligible. The thick earth devil suppressing seal flew towards the shield, while Wang Daoyuan controlled the 5 elements devil suppressing seal to fly above the shield and smash against it. The 3 collided. The thick earth devil suppressing seal met the enemy head-on. The outer layer of yellow sand was directly scattered, and the main body of the seal was also heavily damaged, becoming dim and lightless. The 5 elements devil suppressing seal heavily smashed against the shield, immediately collapsing. Fortunately, the white tiger blade and the black tortoise shield were not damaged. The shield transformed back into a command token, but its spiritual energy was greatly damaged. It would not be able to use it again for a short period of time. When it was used again in the future, it would not have much of its power left. At the place where the 3 collided, the spiritual plants and earth within a radius of 5 kilometers were instantly reduced to nothingness, leaving behind a 3-meter deep crater. A sound like muffled thunder quickly spread to hundreds of kilometers away. All the ferocious beasts in the oasis frantically fled as if a great calamity was about to befall them. The battle between the late-stage Zifu realm and the middle-stage Zifu realm was also affected by the shockwaves. The cultivators on both sides more or less suffered some injuries. The loose cultivator quicksand was affected by the life-bound magic artifact. He continuously spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and lay on the ground. His entire aura was in disorder, and there was not a trace of blood on his face. It was obvious that he had suffered extremely heavy injuries. Wang Daoyuan hid far away and was not injured. However, his spiritual energy was greatly consumed, and he did not even have 10% of his remaining spiritual energy. Chapter 454. When the wild sand cultivator first fought with the flying sand cultivator, he used up a part of his spirit energy. After Wang Daoyuan killed the middle-stage Zifu cultivator, he used a talisman treasure to fight. Its power mainly came from the talisman treasure, so he didn't use up much of his spirit energy. Right now, he still has more than half of his spirit energy and divine sense. Summoning his life-bound magic tool sword, he attacked the flying sand cultivator. Wang Daoyuan took out the purple thunder evil decree, while pouring spirit energy into it, his divine sense locked onto the wild sand cultivator. A purple lightning bolt as thick as a person's waist flew out from the purple thunder evil decree. Around the lightning, there seems to be a purple flame burning. The wild sand cultivator's face showed a frightened expression. He's also a wily old fox, knowing that he can't take this attack head-on, so he threw out several magic tools to block it. Afterwards, he used wind escape to escape far away. This purple lightning is comparable to an all-out attack from an early-stage golden core cultivator. If it's that easy to block, then golden core cultivators wouldn't be worth anything. The magic tool that the wild sand cultivator threw out blocked his back. As the purple lightning flashed, the magic tool was turned into pieces. And the purple lightning itself only lost a bit more than a tenth of its power. The wild sand cultivator's face showed a look of despair. No matter how fast he is, he can't be faster than a golden core cultivator's lightning, so he can only use his life-bound magic tool to block this attack. As the purple lightning flashed, the wild sand cultivator was turned into ashes. His life-bound magic tool was also heavily damaged. The bags of holding around his waist were all burned to ashes. There's only one yin and yang ring left, but it's still intact. To be able to block the purple lightning, it should also be a fourth-stage magic tool. Everyone else was a bit stunned by the power of the purple thunder evil decree, still not able to react. Wang Daoyuan picked up the talisman treasure left behind by the wild sand cultivator, then rode the wind flame flying kite to take the yin and yang ring. After taking the yin and yang ring, he took out a jar of spirit wine, drank a few mouthfuls, then shouted, "The wild sand cultivator is dead, those who surrender will be spared, those who resist will be killed without mercy." He still has the purple thunder evil decree in his hand, so the others don't dare to disobey him, so they all stopped fighting. Wang Daoyuan came next to the flying sand cultivator, gathering spirit energy in his hand. Everyone was a little afraid that he would directly kill flying sand wanderer. Even flying sand loose cultivator was somewhat afraid. The talisman treasure was already in his hand. When he saw the azure dragon pearl in Wang Daoyuan's hand, he relaxed. However, he didn't put away the talisman treasure in his hand. The Tsang dragon orb emitted a green light. Although it didn't extract life force, his wood elemental spiritual power also contained some life force, so the healing effect wasn't bad. Loose cultivator flying sand's injuries had clearly improved. Wang Daoyuan took out 2 more sweet rain jade dew pills and gave them to him. Only then did the others relax. Flying sand loose practitioner immediately took a sweet rain jade dew pill, sat down on the spot, and began to heal. Wang Daoyuan didn't stand on ceremony with him, and claimed ownership of the Qiankuan ring left behind by the wild sand wanderer. He probed into the interspatial ring with his divine sense and found that there was about 100 square feet of space inside. The earth elemental natal tail feather was in the interspatial ring. He had achieved his main goal. In addition to the natal tail feather and some miscellaneous pills and talismans, there was also a heaven-suppressing stone the size of an adult's thumb in the interspatial ring. There was also a jade slip, some 3rd-level upper-grade refining materials, and a 4th-level lower-grade earth mystic crystal the size of an adult's fist. The earth mystic crystal was also an extremely rare earth elemental material. It was extremely strong and very suitable for refining defensive magic tools. In the future, when he improved the Kirin seal, he could add some to increase the defensive ability and strength. Wang Daoyuan took out the jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. Recorded inside was a refining method for a third-level upper-grade magic tool. This magic tool was called Sky Wind Imperial Sand Fan. It was a wind and earth elemental magic tool. The materials used were all in the interspatial ring. The earth elemental natal tail feather was also one of the main materials. This magic tool was indeed used to deal with loose cultivator flying sand. With this thing, he didn't need to fear the thick earth devil suppression seal. Loose cultivator flying sand had already prepared all the materials and could refine the Sky Wind Imperial Sand Fan at any time. Wang Daoyuan secretly rejoiced that he was fast enough. If he had dawdled for a while longer, he probably wouldn't have been able to keep the earth elemental natal tail feather. After loose cultivator flying sand refined the sweet rain jade dew pill, the two of them walked towards the wild sand bandits' encampment in the oasis. The early-stage Zifu realm cultivator inside the formation also saw the scene of his boss being killed and didn't have the heart to resist. He then removed the formation and knelt down to beg for mercy. Wang Daoyuan also didn't have any interest in killing him. He asked, "Where is the treasury of this place?" This early-stage Zifu realm cultivator respectfully replied, "Sir, this place doesn't have a treasury. The collected treasures can only be stored here for a few days before the boss sends people to collect them. After taking them last time, there are only a few spirit stones left." After saying this, he handed over a storage bag. Wang Daoyuan opened the storage bag. There were indeed only a few tens of thousands of spirit stones inside. He handed the storage bag to loose cultivator flying sand and said, "The things I want are inside loose cultivator flying sand's interspatial ring. There are also some refining materials inside. These things are enough. I won't participate in the matter of raiding the wild sand bandits' lair. Farewell." Loose cultivator flying sand had the heaven-suppressing stone and the thick earth mystic crystal on him. These two materials aren't required for the heavenly wind sand fan. This means that he is used to carrying the most precious refining materials on him. It's not very likely that there are grade 4 materials in the cavern. Wang Daoyuan had already obtained all the things he needed. If he continued to follow the flying sand bandits to raid the wild sand bandits' lair, he wouldn't be able to obtain anything too precious. The wild sand bandits' lair still has a low-grade grade 4 formation. The risk is still not small. Risking his life for some grade 3 materials is not worth it. This time's harvest is already big enough. Taking advantage and running away is the true life-saving move of a cultivator traveling outside. If one is insatiably greedy, it's very easy to throw away one's life. Loose cultivator flying sand also has no way to force him. Right now, he has already swallowed the mountain oasis, killed loose cultivator flying sand and 2 middle-stage Zifu realm cultivators. He has also subdued a late-stage Zifu realm and an early-stage Zifu realm cultivator, as well as a flying warship. The strength of the wild sand bandits has already been weakened by more than half. The remaining 2 or 3 big kittens are also unable to cause any big waves. As for loose cultivator flying sand's son, Wang Daoyuan doesn't put him in his heart at all. His talent is not bad, but it's still not enough to threaten him. Moreover, he and loose cultivator flying sand have the same moral character, willing to sacrifice their lives and not their wealth. He reckons that they won't give up their lair that they have operated for hundreds of years and want to stubbornly resist. As long as loose cultivator flying sand is determined to exterminate the wild sand bandits, this bastard definitely won't be able to live. Wang Daoyuan left this place on his sword, returning to Singing Sand Market. Loose Cultivator Flying Sand ordered one of his late-stage Zifu realm subordinates to take Loose Cultivator Flying Sand's life artifact and bring everyone here to the Wild Sand Bandits' lair to surrender. He himself activates the encampment's formation and recuperates here. In his current state, his battle power is about the same as an early-stage Zifu realm cultivator. Once his subordinates have evil intentions, his little life will be in danger. After Wang Daoyuan returned to Singing Sand Market, he didn't head to Clear River Inn. Instead, he went to Divine Weapon Pavilion and stayed in He Yuanqing's abode. This time, he only used up some spiritual energy to deal with Loose Cultivator Flying Sand and wasn't injured. Staying in Clear River Inn, he won't be threatened. Being so cautious isn't because of some materials he snatched from Loose Cultivator Flying Sand. It's because the scarlet feathered crow's egg in the space of the spirit pearl finally has some movement. Previously, when Wang Daoyuan was recuperating, his clone Tu Yuming didn't stay idle in the space of the spirit pearl. He continuously refined the yang qi in the fiery sun stone to nurture the scarlet feathered crow's egg. After his disdainful efforts and consuming more than 150 kilograms of fiery sun stone, the majestic life force in the scarlet feathered crow's egg became active. This eggshell is very special, spiritual sense can't penetrate it at all. Wang Daoyuan can only feel the majestic life force inside, he has no way of knowing the situation of the chick inside. Right now, the scarlet feathered crow's egg is starting to shake non-stop, the chick may start to break out of the shell at any time. He placed the earth attribute life feather near the dust returning flame to nurture, his spiritual sense has been observing the situation of the scarlet feathered crow's egg. Chapter 455. After a few days of tossing and turning, the red-feathered crow egg quieted down. Maybe the yang qi or the fire spiritual power was not enough. Wang Daoyuan ordered his avatar to continue refining the essence of the fiery sun stone to nourish the red-feathered crow egg. He himself refined the essence of the red sun true fire and injected it into the egg. Things like spiritual fire grew faster. As long as there was enough spiritual qi, the lost essence would quickly recover. Losing a little red sun true fire essence was nothing. After 3 days, another 100 pounds of fiery sun stone was consumed. The essence of the red sun true fire was also lost by 30%. The red-feathered crow egg moved again. The mysterious patterns on the eggshell flashed with golden light. After another half a day, a small crack appeared on the eggshell. It was about to break. Wang Daoyuan immediately moved the red-feathered crow egg out of the space of the spirit pearl. After the birds hatched, the first thing they saw was to get close to them. The red-feathered crow also had the bloodline of the golden crow. Its growth space was great and its future was limitless. Although it had already recognized a master, if he did not cultivate feelings, it was likely to be disobedient in the future. As soon as the red-feathered crow egg came out of the space of the spirit pearl, a strong fire attribute spiritual power mixed with pure yang qi spread in the cave. Fortunately, Wang Daoyuan had already opened the restriction in the cave. The fire spiritual power and pure yang qi would not leak out. Otherwise, it would definitely cause a big commotion. As time went by, more and more cracks appeared on the eggshell. After an hour, a small hole appeared on the eggshell. A small golden mouth emerged from the hole. After another hour, the eggshell was pecked half open. The red-feathered crow chick drilled out of the eggshell. This chick was about the size of a chick. It had sparse black fluff on its body. There was an obvious fire attribute spiritual power fluctuation on its body. There was also a strong pure yang qi. Although it was a little difficult to stand up, the spiritual power fluctuation showed that it was a second-level low-grade spiritual bird. Wang Daoyuan stretched out his finger. The little red-feathered crow gently pecked a few times, then opened its mouth to ask him for food. He really did not know what the red-feathered crow liked to eat. There was no record in the inheritance of the 1,000-spirit sect. The inheritance of the 100-spirit supreme was not in his hands. Generally, birds like to eat insects, but the only insect in the space of the spiritual pearl was the soul-chasing bee. Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense entered the space of the spiritual pearl. He took out a soul-chasing bee larva from the beehive and handed it to the nestling's mouth. It didn't even look at it. Wang Daoyuan then took out spirit grains, rabbit meat, and other things, but it didn't even look at them. Finally, he took out a pine nut from the red scale pine, crushed it, and placed it next to the chick's mouth. This time, it ate some. It seemed like this little fella was only interested in fire attribute phase. He kept the fledgling into the spiritual pearl space and handed it over to his doppelganger Tu Yuming to take care of. The eggshell was not an ordinary item, so he carefully put it away. Perhaps it would be useful in the future. The fledgling entered the space of the spiritual pearl, and as soon as it had the ability to move, it ran towards the scarlet yang real fire. It stood right in the middle of the flames and was not hurt at all. On the contrary, it looked very intoxicated. Wang Daoyuan simply ignored it. After cleaning up the fire spiritual power and pure yang qi in the cave, he walked out of the cave. There was nothing he urgently needed in the Mingsha plain, so it was time to leave. After bidding farewell to He Yuanqing, he went to the Noel's shop. There were many fierce beasts roaming around the edge of the southern wasteland. If he continued to go deeper, there would be more fierce beasts and a large number of demonic cultivators. The danger would only be greater, so it was better to ask for information first. When he arrived at the Noel's shop, Yuan Chen quickly greeted, "Dao Yu Zhou, are you here to sell or buy information?" Wang Daoyuan replied, "Naturally, I'm here to buy information." "What information can I sell?" Yuan Chen smiled and said, "Dao Yu Zhou is too polite. You brought the flying sand bandits and killed the wild sand wanderer. The wild sand wanderer's son, Feng Tianyi, sacrificed his life rather than his wealth. He even brought a few loyal followers to defend his lair in the southern part of the Mingsha Ridge. This is a big matter related to the situation of the entire Mingsha plain. This information is worth a lot of spirit stones. In the past few days, there have been several people who have come to me to inquire about the situation. They are very generous. Unfortunately, I don't have any friendship with the flying sand bandits, so I don't dare to ask them. Several big business deals have been delayed, and I'm about to die from worry. As long as you tell me the cause and effect of this matter, I'll tell you whatever information you want to know today, and I won't take a single cent." Wang Daoyuan pondered for a moment, and felt that it wasn't a big deal. He could just hide the key information, and it wouldn't reveal any of his secrets. He smiled and said, "There's no problem in telling you this information. It's just that you have to fulfill your promise. If you don't tell me what information I ask, then don't blame me for being impolite." Yuan Chen patted his chest and guaranteed, "As long as I know, Dao Yu can ask as much as you want." Wang Daoyuan continued, "Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that when I was hunting in the Mingsha Ridge, I took down a third-rank middle-grade sand-chasing harrier. Before I could get it, that grandson Feng Tianyi rushed out and snatched the sand-chasing harrier's corpse. I chased after him for a while, and the wild sand wanderer came out to protect him. I warned him to return it to me, or else I would exterminate the wild sand bandits. But the wild sand wanderer wanted to use the sand-chasing harrier's corpse to refine an artifact to deal with the flying sand wanderer, so no matter what I said, he wasn't willing to return it. I wasn't a match for the father and son, so I could only reveal the information to the flying sand wanderer, and agree to cooperate with the flying sand bandits to take care of the wild sand bandits. The actual operation was that the wild sand wanderer and I led several late-stage Zifu disciples to infiltrate the mountainshade oasis. After I killed a savage beast, I took advantage of the time when the Wild Sand Bandits garrison came to ask for benefits to ambush and kill him, and then attacked the Wild Sand Bandits garrison. The Wild Sand Wanderer led a late-stage Zifu disciple, a middle-stage Zifu disciple, and a flying warship to rescue him. Afterwards, they were ambushed by me and the Flying Sand Bandits. The middle-stage Zifu disciple was killed by me, and the late-stage Zifu disciple surrendered. As for the Wild Sand Wanderer, he was killed by me and the Flying Sand Wanderer. The other details are related to my own secrets, so you don't need to ask about them. Yuan Chen still wanted to ask about some more details, but since Wang Daoyuan had already said so, he didn't dare to ask any more questions. Which cultivator didn't have some secrets? Some secrets, even father and son and wife couldn't tell each other. Asking about other people's secrets was a big taboo in the Shuxian world. Seeing that he didn't ask any more, Wang Daoyuan said with a smile, "Now it's my turn to ask. In the southern wasteland, there's a mountain range that was transformed from a demon's body. Which one is it?" He asked this question because he wanted to know the specific situation of the true Devil Blood Lotus, so that he wouldn't be cheated by the Flying Sand Wanderer. Yuan Chen replied, "There are too many of these mountains in the southern wasteland. Legend has it that the southern wasteland was the battlefield of the ancient demons' invasion. Now that the southern wasteland is like this, it's because a large number of demons were buried here, causing the spiritual energy to change greatly, and it's no longer suitable for human cultivators to live in. Legend has it that there are more than 10 mountains that were transformed from the bodies of high-level demons. For example, the Blood Demon Ridge south of Mingsha Plain, and the Buried Demon Mountain south of the Blood Demon Ridge. Legend has it that they were all transformed from the bodies of demons." It seemed that he couldn't get any definite information, so Wang Daoyuan gave up asking about the true Devil Blood Lotus. He mainly wanted to ask about the metal attribute rank 4 spirit veins, so he asked, "Daoyu, do you know the distribution of rank 4 spirit veins in the southern wasteland? I came to the southern wasteland to look for some rare spirit objects. It's hard to find them without knowing the attributes of spirit veins." Yuan Chen smiled awkwardly, "Daoyu, you're really making things difficult for me. The spiritual energy in the southern wasteland is violent, and without reaching the Golden Core realm, it's impossible to go too deep. Most of the information I have is in the vicinity of Mingsha Plain. Since Daoyu wants to know, I'll tell you what I know. To the east of Mingsha Plain, there's a fire attribute rank 4 spirit vein, and to the west, there's a metal attribute rank 3 spirit vein. In the Blood Demon Ridge south of Mingsha Plain, there are 2 rank 4 spirit veins crossing each other. They are the metal attribute rank 4 spirit vein extending from the north to the south, and the metal attribute rank 4 spirit vein extending from the east to the west. Further south, there's the Buried Demon Mountain, and there's a water attribute rank 4 spirit vein. I don't know anything else, so Daoyu, don't make things difficult for me. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.